The story starts with Thor Regius, the eldest son of Duke Barga Regaz, was born into the Dulgarian Empire. Despite his noble blood, Thor possessed no fighting skills or offensive magic. His only ability was alchemy, a skill his father deemed worthless. After years of being treated as a disgrace, Thor left the Duke's house at 13 to work as a low-level civil servant, using his alchemy to repair items and manage inventory in peace. His quiet life ended when his father's soldiers forcibly dragged him back to the mansion. The Duke, looking for a way to please the Emperor, decided to send Thor as a hostage to the demon territory. In the Empire's eyes, Thor was a disposable sacrifice. His father and the family servants openly mocked him, telling him he was better off dead before tossing him into a locked carriage for a 10-day journey north. During the trip, Thor didn't give up. He used his alchemy to secretly reshape a stolen metal spoon into a tool, waiting for a chance to escape. He knew the Imperial soldiers were terrified of demons, and he planned to make his move once they reached the border. When the carriage finally stopped at the edge of a dark forest, the nervous soldiers fired a signal arrow. 4 massive minotaurs emerged from the trees. While the Imperial soldiers trembled and insulted the savages under their breath, Thor noticed something different. The minotaurs were unarmed and held their hands up to show they weren't a threat. A petite girl in a maid outfit named Mabel stepped forward. She was an elf with silver hair and pointed ears, acting as a guide sent by the demon lord. Unlike the abusive humans Thor grew up with, Mabel and the minotaurs were incredibly polite, bowing deeply to welcome him. The Imperial soldiers remained paralyzed by fear, convinced the demons were about to attack. Disgusted by his own people's cowardice and rudeness, Thor stepped away from the guards and introduced himself with dignity. Mabel smiled, genuinely touched by his kindness, and took his hand. For the first time in his life, Thor was treated with respect, not by the Empire, but by the very monsters he was supposed to fear. As he prepared to enter the demon territory, Thor realized his life as a discarded hostage was over, and his new life was just beginning. Thor turned back to the trembling Imperial captain, who was desperately beckoning him to sign the official transfer document. The captain was visibly terrified, his face pale as he watched Thor casually interact with Mabel. He couldn't understand how Thor could stand near an elf, fearing their magic and distrusting the peace treaty entirely. Thor, however, made it clear he trusted the monsters more than a father who would throw away his own son. Hold up. Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, "I'm loving it." I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. After Mabel happily signed the papers, the delivery was officially complete. Terrified by the appearance of even more minotaurs, the Imperial soldiers shouted a quick blessing for the treaty and sprinted away, leaving Thor behind. Mabel noticed Thor wasn't afraid and offered to have the minotaurs carry him through the dense forest, but Thor declined. As he walked, he realized he felt better than ever. The air in the demon territory was thick with a mysterious energy he had never felt in the Empire. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his head, announcing that he had absorbed enough dark magic power to complete a set of 6 basic attributes. His basic alchemy skill instantly evolved into creation alchemy. He gained several new abilities, material refining, which allowed him to create and reshape substances from pure magic. Attribute addition, to imbue items with specific powers. And appraisal, to see the true nature and stats of any object. He realized his lack of combat skills in the past was likely because his body was waiting to unlock this high-level potential. As they walked, Mabel accidentally tripped on a branch, snapping the golden chain of a precious blue stone pendant, a keepsake from her mother. Seeing her distress, Thor offered to fix it. He sat by a tree and used his new appraisal skill, identifying it as a water spirit stone pendant. Using material refining, he manifested new metal from his magic, seamlessly merging it with the broken links and adding a water attribute to strengthen the bond. Mabel and the Minotaurs watched in total shock as the metal literally grew and repaired itself in Thor's hands. They were amazed, noting that even Master Dwarf craftsmen couldn't work that fast. For the first time, Thor felt the genuine pride of being called a Master Alchemist. The group eventually reached a black carriage decorated with the Demon Lord's silver crest. As they drove toward the capital, Thor looked out the window and saw a world completely different from the Empire's propaganda. Instead of a chaotic wasteland of monsters, he saw a peaceful society where fishermen managed ships, mermaids swam in the rivers, and beastmen tended to sheep. Mabel explained that the Demon Lord simply put everyone where their talents were most useful. When Thor asked about previous messengers from the Empire, Mabel admitted she heard they usually vanished or went home secretly. Thor realized the truth. The Empire sent people as sacrifices, and those people likely tried to flee, leading to the rumors of them being killed. Mabel then looked at Thor with sincere eyes, asking him to stay and help the demon territory with his rare skill. Thor agreed to do what he could, choosing to keep his status as a discarded hostage a secret for now. They arrived at the demon castle, and Thor was led into a grand throne room. There he met the demon lord Ruki Evergard. She wore a mask and a golden-threaded robe with two large horns signaling her immense power. Beside her stood her chancellor, a blue-haired man named Kelv. When Ruki asked what Thor could contribute, he told her he was an alchemist. Kelv was impressed, wrongly assuming the Empire was so powerful they could afford to send away such rare experts. The demon lord decided to give Thor his own workshop and guest room. She granted him full access to a warehouse filled with junk collected by the previous demon lord, items dating back to the era of the hero summoning. She told Thor he could use any of it as material for his work, promising that if he created something useful, the demon territory would buy it and look into mass-producing it. Thor realized he had finally found a place where his worthless skill was actually wanted. Thor officially accepted his role as an alchemist for the demon territory, motivated by the demon lord's policy of learning from the human world rather than just obsessing over raw strength. Unlike the Empire, which discarded him, Ruki Evergard valued his potential and gave him full access to a warehouse of junk left behind by heroes from another world. Thor realized that by using his creation alchemy, he could recreate the advanced technology of these heroes to help the demons and prove to the Empire that his skills were far from worthless. Back in the throne room, the demon lord and Chancellor Kelv discussed Thor's true power. Mabel showed them her repaired pendant, and Kelv's appraisal confirmed it was perfectly fixed, a feat thought impossible with their current technology. While Kelv suspected Thor might be a plant sent by the Empire to show off their superior numbers of experts, Ruki remained cautious. She ordered Mabel to serve as Thor's caretaker and watchman, though Mabel openly admitted she already trusted Thor due to her elven intuition. Left alone in the warehouse, Thor discovered he could actually read the strange languages in the hero's books, likely thanks to his evolved alchemy skills. He found a mail-order catalog filled with realistic pictures of items from the hero's world. One section on health goods caught his eye, describing items that could boost recovery and physical health. He decided his first project would be to recreate these tools to improve life in the demon territory. Mabel arrived with tea and noticed Thor's enthusiasm. As they talked, Thor learned that Mabel suffered from a magical circulation problem that made her body feel constantly cold, which was why she couldn't use magic well and wore thick fur socks. Wanting to help her, Thor found a foot bath in the catalog, a device designed to warm the feet and improve blood flow. Thor immediately got to work. He asked Mabel to clean a large metal bucket while he scavenged for parts. He found two broken shields in the warehouse, one for fire and one for wind. Using creation alchemy, he softened the metal of the shields like clay, easily pulling out the magic stones needed to heat and vibrate the water. When Mabel returned and saw Thor casually reshaping solid metal with his bare hands, she was completely stunned by the sheer level of his power. Thor used his creation alchemy to overlap the bucket and softened shields with the image of the foot bath. As he worked, the metal reshaped itself into a square tub. He carefully inserted the fire and wind magic stones into the base, focusing his magic power to ensure they would provide steady heat and gentle vibration. He realized that while he couldn't perfectly replicate the technology of the hero's world, he could use magic to create a high-quality substitute that performed the same function. Once the process was complete, a new item was born. The foot bath was incredibly durable, powered by magic stones that would last for a year and built to survive for decades. Mabel was stunned that Thor had finished such a complex task in under 10 minutes. Thor modestly brushed it off, thinking his skills were common, though he noted that his father's past insults about his worthless alchemy were clearly wrong. To test the device, they went to the castle basement to get water. Chancellor Kelv joined them, curious to see what Thor had built. Mabel sat on the stairs, removed her thick socks, and placed her feet in the warm, bubbling water. The effect was instant. As the fire stone heated the water and the wind stone created massaging bubbles, Mabel felt her body temperature rise, and her internal magic begin to flow properly for the first time in her life. Kelv was shocked. He explained that Mabel's grandmother was human, which had caused a permanent imbalance in her magic circulation that no healer in the demon territory could fix. By dissolving fire and wind attributes into the water, Thor had created a way for Mabel's body to absorb the missing energy. Overwhelmed with joy, Mabel stood up and successfully cast a wind magic spell, something she had never been able to do before. In her excitement, she hugged Thor, tearfully promising to do anything to repay him for changing her life. Kelv interrupted the moment, explaining that such a powerful item couldn't be kept privately because it could shift the balance of power if the wrong people got hold of it. He offered to buy the invention from Thor using gold coin. Thor, excited to finally be paid for his work, asked instead for a steady supply of various magic stones and materials from the warehouse. He told Kelv he didn't care about politics. He just wanted to create things, see people use them, and eventually surpass the technology of the ancient heroes. Kelv agreed to discuss this all-you-can-use material plan with the Demon Lord. Later, in the throne room, the Demon Lord Ruki was stunned to hear that Mabel had been cured. She and Kelv realized that Thor's understanding of magic and alchemy was far beyond anything they had seen. By using health goods to solve a medical and magical crisis, Thor had proven his value was immeasurable. Meanwhile, back in the Empire, trouble was brewing at the Duke's estate. A butler was sent to the government office to check on a magic sword belonging to the princess that had been sent for repairs. The director of the office revealed that the sword was almost finished because a former employee, Thor, had been secretly fixing it. The director explained that Thor was a genius who repaired everything in the inventory, but the Duke's family had strictly ordered that Thor's name and achievements be kept out of all official records. The butler was horrified. He realized that the useless son they had just thrown away as a sacrifice was actually the only person capable of fixing high-level imperial artifacts. The best alchemist in the capital had already refused to touch the sword, saying it was impossible to repair. Fearing the Duke's wrath and the realization that they had made a massive mistake, the butler threatened the director to never mention Thor's name again. He took the sword to a top-tier workshop, desperately hoping someone else could finish what Thor had started. But the master alchemists there could only bow in respect to the superior craftsmanship already present on the blade. The head of the capital's largest workshop looked at the magic sword and flatly refused to fix it. He explained that repairing such a weapon wasn't just about blacksmithing. It required an alchemist who could match the specific elemental attributes of the original metal. That kind of high-level skill had been lost since the era of the heroes. The old man was actually fanboying over the work already done on the blade, calling the previous repairs amazing and begging to meet the person who did it. The butler panicked, knowing the genius they needed was the same son the Duke had just thrown away. Since he couldn't bring Thor back, he forced the alchemist to just do a cheap, surface-level fix, so the sword would at least look okay for the princess's upcoming ceremony. The alchemist hated the idea but agreed, as long as the butler signed a contract taking full responsibility if the sword broke later. Back at the demon castle, Thor was surprised to find that the food was actually better than what he got in the Empire. Mabel was so thankful for her fixed magic and pendant that she tried to feed him herself, making things a bit awkward. Thor told her he wanted to explore the territory and eventually get a separate room for his alchemy work, since working in the warehouse full of old books was risky. Mabel promised to get permission, mentioning that the Demon Lord was actually pretty chill. Once Mabel left, Thor started looking through the hero's catalog for a solution. He found a simple warehouse, which worked like a magical storage box. It looked small on the outside but had a massive space in another dimension inside. To build it, he needed earth, wind, and dark magic. He had enough earth and wind power, but his dark magic was too low because he had spent his whole life in the Empire, where that energy was rare. Just as he was wondering where to get more power, a huge wave of dark magic suddenly poured into his room from the hallway. His system immediately soaked it up, completing the requirements for the warehouse. When he opened the door, the Demon Lord Ruki was standing there. She had come by secretly to thank him for helping Mabel. Unlike the terrified messengers from the past, Thor was calm and respectful, which made Ruki curious about him. When she asked what he was up to, Thor showed her the catalog and said his goal was to create items that surpassed even the ancient heroes' technology. He wanted to make the demon territory a better place to live than the Empire. Ruki was impressed by his big talk and gave him the green light to start building immediately. Thor didn't wait. He pulled out the metal lumps he had already prepared from old shields and armor. He knew the most important part wasn't the metal shell, but the emptiness inside created by the dark magic. Since he now had the power, he started shaping the metal to create a doorway into a whole new dimension. Thor immediately got to work, mentally mapping out every detail of the simple warehouse from the hero's catalog. Even though he had to scale it down due to limited materials, his focus was absolute. Mabel and the Demon Lord Ruki watched in silence, with Mabel explaining that once Thor starts a project, his passion and concentration are unstoppable. Thor visualized the structure's roughness, weight, and temperature, eventually using his creation alchemy to overlap a translucent magical blueprint onto the metal scraps he had gathered. By imbuing the metal with dark magic for space and earth magic for stability, he successfully manifested the warehouse. The finished product was a metal box only 1.2 meters tall, but its stats were incredible. It featured a separate dimension inside, breathable air, and a preservation effect that prevented food and water from spoiling. It was even built to automatically absorb dark magic from the surrounding environment, making it self-sustaining for a century. Thor invited Mabel inside to check the interior, and they were both stunned. Despite the small exterior, the inside was a massive hall the size of a duke's mansion. Mabel was so thrilled she began running around the vast space, realizing that no treasure in the demon castle could compare to this. Thor admitted his goal was to eventually surpass the technology of the ancient heroes who founded the Empire, wanting to prove his worth by creating a world even better than the one that exiled him. Mabel, moved by his kindness and his help with her magic circulation, promised to support his alchemy however she could. Their conversation was interrupted by Ruki's voice from outside. Because the warehouse was a separate dimension, they hadn't heard her knocking. Ruki was curious and a bit suspicious of a foreign alchemist creating a pocket dimension inside her castle, so she demanded to see the interior for herself. Thor agreed, but as soon as the demon lord stepped inside, the warehouse's automatic organization function kicked in. Since Ruki was wearing a high-level magic mask and robe, the system identified them as rare items and instantly stripped them off her to store them properly. This revealed Ruki's true form. She wasn't a terrifying monster, but a beautiful, petite blonde girl with dark red eyes. Panic ensued as Ruki tried to hide her face, but she eventually calmed down and explained the truth. Because the Empire only respects strength, she had to use magic items to appear as a mysterious and intimidating figure to keep her enemies at bay and her people united. She felt insecure about her small stature and slow physical growth, fearing that no one would take a weak-looking girl seriously as a ruler. Thor, however, was genuinely moved by her appearance, telling her that her natural beauty far surpassed any functional beauty he could create with alchemy. He then shared his own secret. He wasn't a prestigious guest sent by the Empire, but a discarded hostage and a sacrifice deemed worthless by his own father because he lacked combat power. This shared vulnerability created a new bond between the useless alchemist and the weak demon lord, as both had been judged by a world that only valued raw strength. Mabel was shocked to hear that Thor was actually a sacrifice sent by the Empire. She couldn't understand why he would reveal such a weakness when he could have used the Empire's name to make demand. Thor explained that he didn't want to hide behind a lie and asked her to keep his status a secret so the demon territory wouldn't treat him differently. In exchange, he promised to keep Ruki's true identity a secret. Ruki burst into laughter, finding it ridiculous that Thor would trade his biggest secret just to protect hers. However, she was touched by his honesty. She declared that since Thor trusted her with the truth, she would trust him too. She officially ordered Mabel to spread the word that Thor was a prestigious guest and her personal alchemist, ensuring no one would suspect he was a discarded hostage. Ruki decided that Thor's magical warehouse would be their exception zone, a private place where she could take off her mask, and they could all speak freely without titles or pretenses. She even held Thor's hand, promising to be his ally. Mabel suggested turning a corner of the warehouse into a cozy tea party spot where they could relax together. Thor agreed, realizing that his inventions were most valuable when they made his friends happy. Later that night, Chancellor Kelv was stunned to learn that Thor had recreated the storage box, a legendary ability used by ancient heroes to carry infinite items. Kelv panicked, thinking Thor's power could disrupt the entire world's balance, but Ruki calmed him down. She told him Thor had already promised to make storage boxes for her and Mabel too. Kelv realized that with Thor around, the very concept of rare items was about to change forever. Kelv suggested a political marriage between Thor and Mabel to keep his talents tied to the demon territory, even suggesting they could use a future child as a hostage. Ruki immediately shut him down. Knowing Thor's history as a discarded son, she refused to allow anyone to use him or his future family as pawn. Under her mask, she felt flustered at the thought of Thor marrying someone else, though she tried to hide it from Kelv. Meanwhile, back in the warehouse, Mabel helped Thor set up the tea party area. As they worked, Mabel opened up about Ruki's past. Ruki had been raised by a very strict father who valued raw power above all else. Because she looked small and weak, she felt forced to hide behind a mask to command respect. Thor realized they were very similar, as both had been judged by parents who only cared about combat strength. Mabel warned Thor about the military faction in the demon territory, specifically General Risinga, a massive flame giant descendant who obsessed over physical power. She advised Thor to stay away from those who believe might is right, as they wouldn't understand his alchemy. As the night ended, Mabel insisted that Thor stop using formal language with her. She explained that as the Demon Lord's personal alchemist, he outranked almost everyone in the castle. After a bit of back and forth, Thor finally agreed to call her simply Mabel. For the first time, Thor felt a sense of belonging and peace that he had never found in the competitive, power-hungry empire. After Mabel swore her loyalty and left for the night, Thor reflected on his first day in the demon territory. He had found ancient books, created high-level magic items, and finally felt at home. He decided then that he would use his alchemy to make this land better than the Empire ever was, aiming to surpass even the technology of the legendary hero. Meanwhile, back in the Dulgarian Empire, a royal party was underway. Duke Barga Rigaz was basking in the attention of other nobles, bragging about sacrificing his son for the sake of the nation. He openly mocked Thor's memory, calling him a disgrace and a good-for-nothing, while his butler nervously tried to warn him about something. The Duke's arrogance was cut short when Princess Liana arrived. Instead of greeting the Duke, the princess ordered the guards to throw him out, calling him a threat to her life. She revealed that the magic sword the Duke's house repaired had shattered during a monster battle, nearly getting her killed. She exposed the truth. The Duke's butler had signed a contract admitting they only did a surface-level fake repair because they couldn't actually fix it. However, the princess noted that a small portion of the blade had been fixed perfectly by someone else, and that section was the only reason she survived. She demanded to know the name of the genius who did the real work so she could take them into her service. The Duke was paralyzed with fear. The genius she wanted was the same son he had just sent away to die. Following the public humiliation, the Duke was banned from the palace, and in a fit of rage, he threw his butler into prison to take the fall. The next morning in the demon territory, Mabel brought Thor a breakfast identical to what the demon lord eats. Thor felt awkward being treated like royalty, especially when he compared it to his life in the Empire where he ate 3-day-old bread. Mabel explained that everyone in the castle was eager to learn from him, as the demon territory was focused on self-improvement after their historical losses to human heroes. As Mabel guided Thor through the castle, they stopped at a statue of the first demon lord. Thor's creation, Alchemy, immediately told him that the sword held by the statue was a fake. Mabel confirmed the original legendary magic sword had been lost ages ago. Thor secretly decided he would either find it or build an even better one for Ruki, something unique, like a whip sword that could channel her dark magic. Their peaceful tour was interrupted by a massive, muscular man with red hair that looked like flickering flames. It was General Risinga, the leader of the military faction Mabel had warned him about. The giant stood over 2 meters tall, radiating heat and looking down at Thor with clear doubt. He had come to see if the prestigious guest from the Empire was actually worth the hype or just a frail human. Thor politely introduced himself to General Risinga, but the general was unimpressed, calling Thor a weak boy who looked more like a desk worker than a warrior. Standing beside the general was a person in full plate armor, covering every inch of skin. This was the general's daughter, Agnes. When Risinga realized Thor had no combat skills, he mocked him, saying he had hoped for a match between Thor and Agnes to test her strength. During the conversation, Agnes' helmet began spouting flames as she struggled to control her emotion. Mabel stepped in, scolding the general for his rudeness toward a guest of the demon lord. Risinga ignored the lecture, questioning how a weak alchemist could possibly help their ruler. Thor calmly replied that he could strengthen Agnes' armor. He had noticed the armor used double earth attributes for fire resistance, but it was becoming loose and damaged from the heat of her flame. The general took offense at the suggestion of a weak human touching his daughter's gear and stormed off with Agni. Later, after a full tour of the castle, Thor decided to visit the bathhouse to relax. Finding no occupied sign, he entered the resting area and spotted Agnes' armor lying on the floor. Nearby, a door to the boiler room was open. Inside, Thor saw Agnes without her armor, dancing with 3 small fire-breathing salamanders. She was using her own flames to help them boil the water for the castle's bath. Because she is a descendant of the flame giant Ifrit, her body naturally generates intense heat that would incinerate normal clothing, which is why she only wears flame-resistant armor. When Agnes noticed Thor, she panicked, accidentally shooting a blast of fire at him. Thor quickly used a small, simple warehouse item to suck in and trap the flames, keeping himself safe. Distraught, Agnes hid behind the boiler room door, terrified that she had hurt a guest, or that her father would punish the salamanders for her lack of control. Thor calmed her down, realizing now why the general had been so protective. Fixing Agnes' armor literally meant taking away the only thing she could wear. Once Agnes put her armor back on, the two sat down in the resting area. The atmosphere was awkward, but Agnes took the blame, admitting she had forgotten to put up the occupied sign while helping the spirits. Thor noticed the salamanders acting protective of her and realized that beneath the scary armor, Agnes was just a kind girl trying her best to manage a power she couldn't fully control. Thor apologized for seeing Agnes without her armor, but he quickly turned the conversation to her power. He had used his appraisal skill to realize that her armor was failing because it couldn't handle her intense heat. Agnes removed her helmet, revealing her topaz-colored eyes and hair that flickered like real fire. She explained that as a descendant of the flame giant Ifrit, she generates massive amounts of heat that she cannot yet control. Whenever she gets nervous or excited, flames erupt from her body, burning any normal clothes and even hurting people around her. This was why she stayed in the boiler room with the salamanders. They are fire spirits and her only friends who don't get burned. Thor promised to find a solution, explaining that as the demon lord's alchemist, it was his job to help the territory's citizen. To help her immediately, he gave her the ultra-small simple warehouse he had made earlier. He showed her how to use it to store her flames whenever they flared up, acting as a temporary safety valve. Agnes was moved by his kindness and accepted the gift, mentioning that she only needs to manage for 5 more years until her powers naturally stabilize at age 20. Back in his room, Thor consulted his mail order catalog to find a more permanent fix. Mabel arrived and, seeing Thor's dedication, shared a secret. She and Agnes had been childhood friends. However, Agnes had accidentally burned Mabel's arm when her powers first awakened. Though the wound healed, the guilt caused Agnes to distance herself and hide behind her armor. Thor found the perfect item in the catalog, a health promotion pendant based on the hero world's concept of chi, or 5-element magic: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. The catalog explained that illness or heat in the body comes from an imbalance where one element is too strong. Thor realized that if he could create this, it would take Agnes' overflowing fire magic and automatically convert it into the other 4 elements, balancing her power perfectly. Using his creative alchemy, Thor began the difficult process of mimicking the pendant's complex design, which featured 5 divine beasts: the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, and Kirin. As he worked, his system granted him a new skill, 5-attribute manipulation, allowing him to use the hero world's unique wood and metal attributes. He successfully forged the silver pendant, housing a magic conversion mechanism inside. The finished item was a high-rarity masterpiece designed to divide the wearer's magic into 5 equal parts, finally giving Agnes a way to live a normal life without her flames destroying everything she touched. The health promotion pendant worked exactly as planned. Instead of letting Agnes' fire magic explode outward, it converted the energy into the other 4 elements: wood, earth, metal, and water. This didn't just stop the flames. It recycled the energy to boost her health, vitality, and physical strength. Seeing how effective it was, Mabel suggested making giant versions of these statues to balance the magic of the entire demon territory, though Thor knew that would require the demon lord's permission first. Meanwhile, General Risinga was preparing to leave the castle. He apologized to his daughter Agnes for her uncontrollable flames, blaming himself for the strong blood of the flame giant Ifrit in her vein. He explained that they were heading to a southern mine to clear out monsters as part of a deal with the Empire. He wanted Agnes to use her destructive fire to prove her worth as a warrior, believing that hurting things was the only way her power could be useful. Agnes nodded obediently, but secretly she wished for a gentler life. She thought about Thor and how he wasn't afraid of her, even calling her flames beautiful. The next evening, Thor met Agnes at the bathhouse rest area for their final meeting. Mabel joined them, bringing a spare maid outfit. When Thor presented the finished pendant, Agnes was shocked. She was terrified that trying on normal clothes would just result in her burning them and disappointing Thor, especially since her emotions usually triggered her fire. Thor reassured her that as the territory's alchemist, he would stay by her side and fix the item as many times as needed until it worked perfectly. Moved by his words, Agnes went into the boiler room with Mabel to change. As she put on the pendant and the maid outfit, the magic kicked in immediately. The system confirmed that her overflowing fire magic was being perfectly balanced. When she stepped out, she looked like a completely different person. Wearing the white apron and headdress, she looked incredibly cute, and for the first time, her flickering red hair wasn't accompanied by dangerous heat. The transformation was so effective that when Agnes got embarrassed and her magic surged, the pendant simply converted the extra energy into physical stats. She accidentally jumped so high she floated toward the ceiling, realizing her body felt lighter and her skin felt healthier than ever. The trauma of accidentally burning Mabel years ago finally began to melt away. Mabel hugged her tightly, proving once and for all that Agnes was no longer a danger to the people she loved. Agnes wept with joy, finally free from the heavy armor that had been her prison. Through her tears, she thanked Thor for giving her a chance at a normal life. Mabel encouraged Thor to hug Agnes to celebrate her new freedom, and though it was a bit awkward since Agnes wasn't wearing anything under the maid outfit yet, Thor agreed. Just as they were about to embrace, General Risinga's loud voice boomed through the hallway, interrupting the moment. Agnes quickly explained everything to her father, how Thor's alchemy had suppressed her dangerous flames and allowed her to finally wear normal clothes. The general was so overwhelmed with guilt for his earlier rudeness that he dropped into a deep bow, slamming his head against the floor repeatedly. He even tried to poke his own eyes out as punishment for failing to see Thor's true character, but Agnes and Thor managed to stop him. Risinga admitted he had only been harsh because he wanted Agnes to prove her strength as a warrior to gain confidence. Now that he saw her happy and safe, he pledged his absolute loyalty to Thor. As a reward for helping his daughter, the general granted Thor full access to his territory's mines to search for rare alchemy materials like meteoric iron. Thor made some final adjustments to Agnes' pendant, adding a spare and a user support feature he learned from the Hero World's manual. Agnes was so grateful that she promised to dedicate herself to supporting Thor's dreams in return. Later, on the castle balcony, Agnes and Mabel shared a private moment. Agnes thanked Mabel for her help, and admitted she wanted to study hard so she could eventually serve as Thor's second attendant. She handed Mabel a mysterious small black stone that doesn't melt even in extreme heat, asking her to give it to Thor as an alchemy material. As they talked, Mabel teased Agnes about her embarrassment, realizing that Thor had seen quite a bit during their accidental meeting in the bathhouse. While Agnes turned bright red, Mabel jokingly wondered if she, as Thor's loyal maid, should also accidentally show as much to keep her master happy. Agnes and Mabel shared a private moment where Agnes revealed she had been practicing fire control in the boiler room with the salamanders. They promised to keep her secret between them and Thor. Meanwhile, in the throne room, Flame General Risinga knelt before Demon Lord Ruki and Chancellor Kelv. In a shocking move, the general swore an absolute oath of allegiance in the name of the primordial flame, a sacred vow of the Ifrit bloodline that hadn't been used since the time of the first Demon Lord. Risinga explained his change of heart, calling Thor his benefactor. He admitted that he had initially tried to kidnap Thor out of a misunderstanding, but Agnes had stopped him. He marveled at how Thor's alchemy had transformed his daughter. She was now so strong that she had easily restrained and lifted her father over her head. Ruki was stunned. She realized Thor hadn't just suppressed Agnes' flames, but had converted that energy into physical power that rivaled a legendary hero's magic. Risinga offered to resign as punishment for his rudeness, but Ruki had a better plan. Knowing Thor wouldn't want the general punished, she confiscated a piece of Risinga's land near the southern mines to build Thor a private mansion and a world-class alchemy workshop. Risinga was overjoyed to pay for the construction, seeing it as a way to repay Thor. Before leaving, the general hinted that Agnes' vow to Thor might have a deeper, romantic meaning in their culture, leaving Ruki curious and Kelv slightly panicked. The next day, Agnes and the general departed for their territory. Agnes, now comfortably wearing a normal dress lent by Mabel, looked forward to Thor visiting her new home soon. Back in his workshop, Thor examined the mysterious black stone Agnes had given him. Using his alchemy skills, he identified it as an iron meteorite from outer space. This discovery unlocked a brand new space attribute for his crafting, an element completely unknown in the Empire. Excited by the new possibilities, Thor began organizing the messy warehouse next to his room, which he considered a treasure trove of junk. While sorting through old books, he found a record written by the first Demon Lord about the history of the territory and its people. He got so absorbed in reading the ancient texts that he nearly lost track of time. He was supposed to meet Ruki and Mabel for a tea party at 3 p.m., but as he tried to hurry his cleaning, a voice called out to him, interrupting his work. Thor was deep in a book written by the first Demon Lord when Mabel and Ruki arrived for their tea party. Ruki had ditched her usual mask and heavy robes for a stylish black outfit with ribbons, looking every bit like a normal 15-year-old girl. When Thor complimented her, she got flustered and demanded he stop calling her Your Majesty and just use her name, Ruki, as a sign of their friendship. While cleaning the warehouse, Thor found a short black magic sword in a wooden box. Using his appraisal skill, he identified it as a discarded prototype from a failed project to recreate the legendary magic sword. It only had a basic strength-boosting effect and a dull blade. Ruki officially gifted it to him, and Thor immediately proposed a new project. He wanted to use his alchemy to turn this replica into a masterpiece that Ruki could use in battle, something so cool it would match her true face once she finally felt comfortable enough to stop wearing her mask. Ruki was touched but told him not to rush. She explained that for her upcoming monster subjugation mission, she didn't need a sword for frontline combat. Instead, she needed something that would allow her and her soldiers to attack safely from a long distance. Thor took this challenge to heart and began searching his mail order catalog for a solution. During their tea, they also worked on the blueprints for Thor's new home and workshop, which General Risinga offered to build. Mabel and Ruki took charge of the living quarters, adding a massive bathroom and a spacious bedroom with 2 beds. Mabel claimed the extra space was for taking care of Thor, blushing as she suggested he'd need help washing up after a long day of alchemy work. The next day, Thor found the perfect item in his catalog, a laser pointer that could also function as a laser sight. In the hero's world, this tool was used to mark targets and increase the accuracy and range of weapons like crossbows by 5 times. Thor realized this was exactly what the demon territory needed to take down monsters before they could even get close. Using his creative alchemy, Thor combined light and dark magic stones. He used the dark attribute to compress the light into a straight beam and added wind attributes to carry the light even further. The result was a 60 cm metal cylinder, a high-rarity laser pointer with a built-in safety feature that prevented it from being used against humans or demons. Eager to see if it worked, Thor and Mabel headed to the castle's magic training ground. They arrived to find a group of soldiers, including elves and minotaurs, in the middle of a heated argument about the best way to handle the Gargarasa monsters without putting the magic units in danger. Thor stepped forward, ready to show them how his new invention could solve their tactical nightmare. Thor and Mabel headed to the castle's magic training ground, where a Minotaur commander and an elf mage were arguing. The two units were at odds over the upcoming Gargarasa monster mission. The vanguards wanted a fast assault, while the mages feared being surrounded and needed to maintain a safe distance. Thor noticed that, unlike the Empire's rigid hierarchy, the demon territory allowed soldiers to openly debate strategy. After getting permission to use the facility, Thor tested his new laser pointer. He shouldered the device, and a bright red dot appeared on a distant stone target, framed by a black border for visibility. He asked Mabel to fire an ice spell at the mark. To her surprise, every icicle arrow hit the center perfectly, even as they moved back to 3.5 times the normal magic range. Thor realized the device wasn't just a visual aid. The beam of light and dark magic created a physical flow that pulled the spells toward the target. Mabel was stunned, noting that such technology made long-distance combat incredibly safe. The soldiers nearby stopped their arguing and watched in total silence, shocked to see a maid, who previously struggled with magic, hitting targets at impossible distances. Realizing the tactical problem was solved, the commanders rushed to the Chancellor's office to demand Thor's invention be approved for the mission. Meanwhile, in the southern territory of General Risinga, a corrupt imperial messenger named Margrave Garoa arrived to finalize a mining treaty. The Demon Lord had agreed to share silver from a new mine with the Empire in exchange for cooperation in clearing out monsters. However, Garoa tried to bribe Risinga, suggesting they extend the contract to 4 years and pocket the extra silver themselves. Garoa's plan was to frame Thor for the crime, claiming Thor had forged the documents to steal the silver for himself. He assumed Risinga would agree since the Empire viewed Thor as a worthless sacrifice. He didn't realize that Risinga now considered Thor a hero and a close friend who had saved his daughter. Exploding in rage, Risinga's body erupted in flames, turning the meeting table to ash. He screamed at the terrified Margrave, declaring that Thor was his benefactor and a potential husband for his daughter, Agnes. Risinga called off the local negotiations, stating he would report the Empire's corruption directly to the Emperor. He made it clear that the demon territory would no longer deal with lowly nobles who tried to use Thor as a scapegoat. Terrified by the general's power and the sudden collapse of his political career, Garoa watched as Risinga shattered the reinforced windows, signaling that the meeting and their alliance was over. Outside the window, General Risinga's voice boomed as he addressed the gathered soldiers. He publicly declared that the negotiations had failed because Margrave Garoa had insulted his friend Thor. He ordered the Margrave to leave immediately, refusing to bow to anyone who disrespected his guest. Terrified and confused by how much the general valued Thor, the Margrave and his men scrambled to retreat back to the Empire. Agnes, Risinga's daughter, rushed into the room. When she learned the Empire's messenger had insulted Thor, her protective pendant glowed as she prepared to chase them down and burn them. However, Risinga stopped her. He explained that if Thor found out the Empire truly viewed him as a disposable sacrifice, it would break his heart. They agreed to keep the insult a secret to protect Thor's feeling. Risinga even suggested that Agnes should become Thor's personal servant to stay close to him. Risinga sent a full report to the Demon Lord Ruki, explaining why he broke off the talks. A few days later, Ruki replied, fully supporting his decision. Surprisingly, she had also received a letter from the Emperor of the Empire. The Emperor claimed the Margrave's bribe attempt was an unauthorized move and offered to help kill the monsters for free as an apology. The Empire even promised to send the third princess, Liana, to assist. To show the demon territory's strength, Ruki decided she would lead the mission herself. This would be her first official conquest, and a thrilled Risinga began preparing his troops to welcome her. Back in the Empire, Duke Barga Regus was in a panic. He had already bragged to the Emperor that the silver mine deal was a guaranteed success. When he found out the general had rejected the deal specifically to protect Thor, the Duke was stunned. He couldn't understand why a powerful demon general would care about his useless son. The Duke's situation turned from bad to worse when the Minister of Military Affairs, Zagrin, arrived at his office with soldiers. Zagrin revealed he had spies in the Margrave's camp and knew everything, including the Duke's plan to frame Thor. The minister was disgusted not by the cruelty, but by the Duke's stupidity in offending a powerful general. The consequences were immediate and brutal. The minister informed the Duke that Thor was now a taboo subject. The boy the Duke called useless had managed to gain the favor of the demon territory's highest leaders in just a few days. Because the Duke had embarrassed the Empire, he was stripped of his title, demoted to a mere count, and forced to pay for the entire monster expedition out of his own pocket. To save his life, the former Duke was forced to join the army as a low-level captain of 10 men, sent to fight in a dangerous southern conflict. The once mighty Regus family was effectively ruined. At the Demon Castle, Lord Ruki and Chancellor Kelv reviewed the letters. Ruki noted how quickly the Emperor had sent his apology, realizing the Empire was likely monitoring their own corrupt official. As she reread Risinga's report for the 5th time, she focused on the part where the Empire tried to use Thor as a scapegoat. Seeing how much Thor had been mistreated by his own people only made her more determined to protect him. Ruki's hands trembled as she finished reading the reports from General Risinga. She was horrified to learn that Thor's own father, the Duke, had planned to use his son as a disposable scapegoat to cover up a failed bribery attempt. The realization of how poorly Thor had been treated in the Empire made her blood boil, but she forced herself to stay calm to maintain her dignity as the Demon Lord. Later, Ruki met with Chancellor Kelv to discuss the situation. They agreed that while the Empire's corruption was disgusting, Thor's status in the demon territory wouldn't change. He was an essential friend and a brilliant alchemist. However, while Risinga wanted to keep the Duke's betrayal a secret to protect Thor's feelings, Kelv argued that Thor needed to know the truth to avoid being manipulated by the Empire in the future. Ruki decided she would be the one to tell him personally during their next tea party. In Thor's room, the mood was light as he and Mabel showed Ruki the successful results of the laser pointer. Ruki tried to act natural, but the weight of the news was too much. As she looked at Thor's smiling face, she realized how cruel it was to tell him about his father's betrayal in such a happy setting. When she finally tried to explain the incident at the silver mine, her voice cracked. She couldn't hold back her emotions and began to cry, eventually sobbing as she told Thor that his father had tried to frame him for a crime that would have cost him his life. Thor was surprised to see the Demon Lord crying for him, but he took the news calmly. He comforted Ruki, telling her it sounded exactly like something his father would do. He explained that in the Empire, strength is everything. His grandfather, a legendary swordmaster, was killed by a common thief while drunk, which taught Thor that raw strength is unreliable. Because Thor chose to focus on alchemy instead of combat, his father viewed him as a failure and a tool. Ruki, still emotional, wouldn't let go of Thor's hand. She confessed that she didn't want him to feel lonely after learning how his family had discarded him. She even wished they could stay together until they fell asleep, but Mabel pointed out that it was against the castle rules for the Demon Lord to have a male guest in her room overnight. To solve the problem, Thor looked through his mail order catalog and found a latest model body pillow. He explained that this wasn't a normal pillow. It was made of a magical material that could change shape. He planned to use the concept of shape-shifting magic, similar to a legendary hero who could turn magic into any form, to customize the pillows. By infusing the pillows with their magical energy, they could create a version of the item that felt like holding hands with one another, allowing them to feel connected even while sleeping in separate rooms. Thor started working on the new item using bean shells and magic stones provided by Ruki and Mabel. He used his alchemy to refine the material, creating a special cloth that could change shape based on a person's magic and thoughts. To make it even better, he added water and wind elements so the pillow would stay soft, cool, and breathable. To test the invention, Mabel held the pillow cover and filled it with her magic. When they put the cover on the pillow, it transformed into a perfect copy of her. While Ruki and Mabel were impressed, Thor called the creation a failure. He explained that even though it looked like Mabel, it couldn't capture her real beauty or the kindness she showed him every day. He went on a long rant praising her charms, which made Mabel so shy she couldn't even look up. After the test, Thor made a version of the pillow that looked like himself for Ruki. He explained that because the pillow shared his senses, Ruki could hold its hand and he would feel it in his own room, keeping them connected while they slept apart. That night, Mabel sneaked the pillow cover into Ruki's room. Since the Demon Lord's floor is strictly off-limits to men, this was the only way for Ruki to feel close to him. After getting ready for bed, they put the cover on the pillow, and it turned into a sleeping version of Thor. Even though she felt a bit embarrassed, Ruki was happy that Thor had gone to such lengths just to fulfill her wish. The two girls tucked the pillow into bed, ready to spend the night holding Thor's hand. Ruki and Mabel spent the night in the Demon Lord's bedroom with the Thor body pillow. They realized a major problem. Holding the pillow's hand felt so warm and real that they were too excited to sleep. To distract themselves, Ruki discussed the news from the Empire. She confirmed that the Duke and the Margrave had been stripped of their positions for trying to frame Thor, making Thor effectively untouchable now that the Empire realized how much the demon territory valued him. Mabel mentioned that Thor used to go by his mother's surname, Kanan, when he worked away from home. Ruki loved the name and decided they should use it when they were alone together. Before falling asleep, both girls traced the name Thor Kanan onto the palms of the body pillow. The next morning, the pillow returned to its normal shape. When they visited Thor later that day, Ruki greeted him as Thor Kanan. Thor wasn't surprised. He explained he'd had a strange dream about people writing that name on his hands all night. He guessed they had used the pillow to influence his senses and asked for a full report on how they used it so he could improve the alchemy. Embarrassed, Ruki shouted that what girls do in bed is a maiden's secret and told him not to ask any more questions. Later in the throne room, Thor gave a formal presentation to Ruki, Chancellor Kelv, and the military leaders. He introduced a new material he discovered while making the pillow: magic cloth. By melting magic stones into fabric, he created 4 types of cloth based on the primary elements: earth, brown, extremely strong and fire-resistant, impossible to tear; water, blue, highly flexible and form-fitting, perfect for swimming or active wear; fire, red, incredible heat insulation, keeps the wearer warm in freezing weather; wind, green, breathable and quick-drying, keeps the wearer cool in heat. The officers were thrilled, realizing these fabrics could revolutionize their armor and daily lives. Ruki decided to trial the wind cloth for the soldiers during the upcoming volcano mission to keep them cool. When Ruki asked if he had made light and dark versions, Thor reluctantly showed off his cloaks. The dark cloth absorbed light to become pitch black, which Thor suggested was only good for blackout curtains or naps. The light cloth was even more unique. It became 80% transparent when magic was applied. Thor considered it a failure because it wasn't perfectly invisible, but the sight of a semi-transparent cloak left the entire room in shock at the potential of his failed invention. Thor showed the group a dual-attribute magic cloth that combined light and dark. This failed experiment randomly turned either pitch black or transparent whenever magic touched. Though Thor thought it was useless, he joked about gifting it to people he hated so their clothes might disappear. Ruki and the Chancellor agreed it wasn't practical yet, but praised Thor's other fabrics. Ruki then ordered the army to use the wind cloth for the mission and told Thor to take a break. She suggested he visit General Risinga's territory to scout a location for his new workshop and relax in the local hot springs. Before leaving, Mabel briefed Thor on their target, Gargarasa. It is a massive metal-tough spider with a swarm of subordinates. Its sticky threads are its deadliest weapon, capable of trapping anyone and silencing mages. Thor learned that the mission was a joint operation with the Empire, and the third princess, Lyanna, would be joining them to test her legendary holy sword. Although Thor had no interest in the Empire, his curiosity as an alchemist piqued. He wanted to see a real holy sword so he could eventually craft a magic sword for Ruki that would surpass it. As the army marched south, the soldiers were in high spirits thanks to Thor's invention. In the hot volcanic region, the tents and uniforms made of wind cloth kept everyone cool and dry. Thor also found a clever use for the failed light cloth. By making storage bags and tents transparent with a touch of magic, the soldiers could instantly check their inventory without opening anything. Even though Chancellor Kelv limited the use of some advanced items like the simple warehouse to keep the soldiers from getting confused, the elite units were fully equipped with Thor's pendants and gear. At the base of the mountain, Ruki held a final strategy meeting. General Risinga's fire-breathing units would take the front line to burn Gargaras's webs, while the Minotaur units, strengthened by Thor's health pendants, would handle close combat. To deal with any excess webbing that couldn't be burned, the leaders were equipped with storage items to suck the threads away. With the strategy set, the Demon Territory's elite stood ready to meet the Imperial Army and begin the hunt. The Demon Territory leaders finished their final meeting to prepare for the hunt. They planned to use Thor's storage items to clear spider webs, his special pendants to power up the Minotaurs, and his laser pointers to help mages hit targets from a distance. Ruki warned her captains not to get overconfident, while Chancellor Kelv complained that the Empire was being suspiciously silent about their own plans. Thor had a feeling the Empire was trying to use the monsters to level up their weak soldiers, a move that could easily go wrong. Suddenly, a messenger arrived with news that the Imperial Army had already started the fight on their own near the border. At the Empire's camp, the Minister of Military Affairs, Zagran, was busy trying to show off. He had brought Princess Lyanna, a young girl with platinum hair who wielded the legendary holy sword. Their plan was to use disgraced nobles as bait to lure the monster Gargarasa into the open, then have Lyanna deal a flashy blow to prove the Empire was still the strongest in front of the watching demon army. As the fight began, Lyanna charged toward the giant spider with her sword glowing with light. She wanted to look like a hero, but she quickly realized she had walked into a trap. A group of small spiders was hiding under the boss's belly and attacked her all at once. Lyanna was forced to use all her magic power just to clear out the small spiders, leaving her completely exhausted and unable to move as the boss monster turned its attention toward her. Just as Gargarasa was about to finish her off, Lyanna noticed a small red dot appearing on the monster's head. A beam of light stretched all the way back to the hills where the demon army was stationed. Even though the distance was way too far for normal magic to reach, a massive blast of energy suddenly hit the red dot. Part of the monster's head was blown off instantly, saving the princess. Lyanna stood there in total shock, unable to understand how the demon mages had landed a perfect hit from such an impossible distance. The Demon Territory's army unleashed a massive wave of magic that struck the target with impossible precision. Every spell hit the red dot marked by the laser pointer, blowing away the monster Gargarasa's head and legs. While the beast struggled in agony, the Imperial army was in a state of total collapse. Princess Lyanna, exhausted and unable to move after wasting her magic on small spiders, was forced to retreat by her commander Zagrin. The Empire's blockade had failed, and their plan to secure a heroic kill for the princess was ruined. Liana felt the sting of humiliation, having been saved by the very demons she intended to outshine. Watching from the hills, Demon Lord Ruki and Chancellor Kelv were stunned by the laser pointer's true power. They realized it didn't just extend range, it acted as an attack magic amplifier. By creating a physical line of magic power, it pulled every soldier's spell into a single point, concentrating the force of a dozen mages into one devastating strike. Ruki realized Thor had accidentally created a game-changing weapon of mass destruction. Refusing to watch the humans die, Ruki ordered her army to assist the retreating Empire. General Risinga and the Minotaur units, powered up by Thor's health pendants, prepared for close combat, while the mages continued their long-range bombardment. Using the laser pointer, the elven units tore through the remaining monsters from a distance so great they were barely visible. Ruki decided to show her own strength to ensure the Empire wouldn't underestimate her. She unleashed her void magic flame, a dark magic that erases existence itself. Because the laser pointer was powered by dark magic, it created a constant link between Ruki and her spell. This allowed her to move the black flames around freely just by shifting the red dot. She wiped out the small spiders effortlessly, moving the fire from target to target like a remote-controlled disaster. The Gargarossa, realizing it was outmatched, tried to flee, but Ruki pinned it against a rock wall with her magic. The massive beast finally collapsed and died under the relentless pressure of the black flames. The Demon Territory's soldiers cheered, hailing Ruki as a ruler even more powerful than the first Demon Lord. Meanwhile, Risinga and his units were left standing awkwardly, disappointed that Thor's inventions had made the battle so easy they didn't even get to swing their weapons. With the threat gone, Ruki declared victory. She called out to the Imperial Army, specifically Princess Liana, requesting a meeting to discuss their joint operation. Though she was annoyed that the Empire had broken their promise and acted alone, Ruki chose to remain diplomatic for the sake of long-term peace. She hoped that by working together, the common people of the Empire might eventually see demons as allies rather than monsters. An hour later, the two armies set up separate camps. While the Demon Territory celebrated a flawless victory with 0 injuries, the Imperial camp was a mess of wounded soldiers and bruised egos. Princess Liana and Zagrin eventually agreed to the meeting, walking toward the Demon Lord to face the consequences of their failed gamble. The meeting between the leaders took place at a midpoint between the two camps. On the demon side were Ruki, Chancellor Kelv, and General Risinga. Representing the Empire were Princess Liana and the Minister of Military Affairs, Zagrin. Liana, still covered in monster blood and visibly shaking, thanked Ruki for saving them. She admitted her own lack of power, clearly terrified after seeing the demon army effortlessly destroy a monster she couldn't even scratch with her holy sword. Ruki felt a bit of pity seeing the princess so broken, but she was also thinking about the incredible power of Thor's laser pointer. She officially introduced herself as the Demon Lord and tried to comfort Liana, telling her that even a legendary hero would have struggled against such a beast, and that her wounds were proof of her bravery. As Liana struggled to speak, Zagrin stepped in. He thanked the demons for their help but then tried to spin the story, claiming the battle was a joint victory for both nations. Kelv and Risinga were annoyed by this lie. Following their pre-battle plan, Kelv questioned why the Empire attacked early instead of waiting for the joint meetup. He pointed out that the Empire's reckless move almost led to a disaster. Ruki pressed Liana for the truth, asking if the Empire had intentionally lured the monster out, which would be seen as a hostile act. Before the princess could confess, Zagrin interrupted. He blamed the entire mess on a group of runaway soldiers and criminals who supposedly acted without orders. He claimed Liana only fought the monster to save those men. It was a clear lie designed to save face and hide the fact that they tried to steal the kill and failed. To shut them up, Zagrin offered a bribe, a formal letter of appreciation and a chest of treasures. He refused to let the demons interview the guilty soldiers, claiming they were too injured to speak. Ruki stepped aside with her advisors to discuss the offer. Kelv suggested they accept the bribe and the letter. It was official proof that the Empire owed them, which was good for future politics. Risinga was furious about the broken promise, but Ruki calmed him down. She ordered Risinga to secretly search the monster's nest afterward to find those runaway soldiers and get the real story. Returning to the tent, Ruki accepted the deal. As the meeting ended, Liana asked one last question. She was fascinated by the long-range magic the demons used and asked if it was the work of a wandering alchemist. She mentioned that someone had recently repaired her magic sword and she wanted to find him. Liana's tone changed. She spoke about the alchemist as a low-ranked tool. She said she wanted to use him for the Empire, suggesting he should devote his entire life and body to serving the royal family. Hearing this, Ruki's blood boiled. She realized the Empire had no idea they had thrown away a genius like Thor by sending him as a sacrifice. She was disgusted that Liana only cared about Thor's utility and saw him as an object to be owned. Ruki's voice turned cold as she refused to give any information. She told Liana that the Empire had already made its choice to discard him, and now they had to live with that mistake. In a burst of protective anger, Ruki took off her mask, staring Liana down with glowing red eyes. She shouted that Thor was happy in the demon territory, that he was her dear friend, and that she would never, ever hand him over to people who just wanted to exploit him. Realizing she had just screamed about how much she loved living with Thor in front of everyone, Ruki turned bright red and quickly put her mask back on. She awkwardly ended the meeting, wishing for peaceful relations, while her advisors stood there in shock at her outburst. Frightened by the demon lord's intensity, Liana and Zagran quickly apologized and ended the negotiation. The Minister of Military Affairs, Zagran, tried to play nice, praising Ruki's dark flames as a terrifying power the Empire respected. Ruki didn't let him flatter her. She coldly told him that her strength wasn't her own. It came from someone the Empire considered weak. She explained that without that person's help and knowledge, her army couldn't have won so easily. Zagran was confused, but Ruki just grinned, told him it was a lesson he needed to learn, and walked away, ending the meeting. Meanwhile, Thor was heading toward the monster's nest with Mabel and a squad led by Agnes. They were searching for any surviving spiders or Imperial soldiers. Agnes and Mabel were worried about Thor being out in the open, fearing he might run into people from his old home. Thor reassured them by putting on a new dark magic robe he'd made. It was dusk, and the robe absorbed light, making him practically invisible in the shadows. He was also hoping to find spider remains to study. He wanted to understand how the princess's holy sword worked so he could craft a magic sword that surpassed it. Suddenly, the scouts found an Imperial soldier. Mabel and Agnes quickly hid Thor in the trees. Agnes stepped forward to handle the situation. The soldier was a middle-aged man in leather armor who claimed he had been lost after the monster attack. As he came closer, Thor recognized him immediately. It was the guard captain of his father, Duke Barga Regues. This was the same man who had helped frame Thor and mock him during his exile. Thor sensed a trap. He handed Mabel a special cushion he had brought and told her to have the soldier sit on it. When the guard captain sat down, he handed over a letter claiming that Duke Regues realized he had made a mistake and wanted to apologize to Thor. He even called Thor his lord, which Thor knew was a total lie. Mabel and Agnes, acting on Thor's plan, started questioning the captain about Thor's hobbies and favorite things to see if he really was a trusted aide. The man couldn't answer a single question because he never cared about Thor back in the Empire. Seeing enough, Thor stepped out of the shadows, revealing himself. The captain was shocked to see Thor being protected and respected by the demon army. The captain insisted Thor read the letter alone, but Thor did the opposite. He ordered Agnes and Mabel to read it out loud for everyone to hear. The letter was a blatant trap. His father claimed to be sorry, but then asked Thor to spy on the demon territory, report on General Risinga's military strength, and eventually return to the Empire, bringing Agnes with him as a guest, who would obviously be a hostage. In exchange, his father promised to let him back into the family. Thor was disgusted. He realized the letter wasn't even his father's words. It was written by the Empire's higher-ups. He decided he was done with them forever. In front of all the soldiers, Thor announced that he was officially throwing away the name Regues. He declared that from that day on, he would use his late mother's surname and be known only as Thor Kanan, an alchemist of the demon territory. Mabel and Agnes were moved to tears by his resolve, and the demon soldiers cheered, swearing their loyalty to Thor Kanan regardless of his past. The guard captain lost his mind, screaming that Thor had no pride or grace left as a noble. Thor simply told him that he didn't need any of it. He told the captain to go back and tell his master that Thor Regues was dead. When the captain tried to draw his sword and escape, he found he couldn't move. He was stuck to the rock. The cushion Thor had given him was actually a trap cushion designed to capture monsters. It worked perfectly on humans too, leaving the captain pinned down as the rest of the demon army closed in. The guard captain tried his best to break free, but the trap cushion only gripped the rock tighter as he struggled. Thor watched him squirm, calmly telling the man he looked tired and should just relax. The captain was convinced his own body was failing him, having no idea he was caught in one of Thor's specialized inventions. Thor realized that if the letter had been a genuine apology, he might have let the man go, but the Empire's attempt to use him as a spy was the final straw. Soon, the main demon army arrived to clean up the area. When Demon Lord Ruki saw a human soldier stuck to a rock, she was confused until Thor explained the situation. Ruki ordered Chancellor Kelv and General Risinga to take the captain into custody. They planned to question him for information, and then hand him back to the Empire later so they couldn't claim the demons were mistreating their men. Agnes was given the secret to unlocking the cushion, and the soldiers celebrated their victory with wine brought from the castle. Later, Ruki called Thor and Mabel to her private tent for a serious talk. She asked Thor if he had ever repaired a magic sword back in the Empire. Thor remembered fixing an old, cracked blade for an aristocrat long ago. adding light and earth attributes to it before he was pulled away from the project. Ruki revealed that the sword belonged to Princess Liana, who was now searching for the wandering alchemist who fixed it. Ruki was honest with Thor, explaining that Liana wanted to find him and force him to serve the royal family forever. Ruki admitted she had already screamed at the princess and refused the offer on the spot because she didn't want to lose her friend. She felt guilty for making a choice for Thor without asking him, but Thor quickly reassured her. He told Ruki he had no intention of going back to a place where he was just a tool. He was happy in the demon territory because Ruki gave him freedom and appreciated his work. Hearing this, Ruki took off her mask, her eyes soft with relief, and thanked him. They then discussed the guard captain's letter. Thor pointed out that the letter was filled with fancy language his father never used, meaning the Empire's higher-ups had written it. He suspected the Empire sent the captain knowing he would get caught, just to plant seeds of doubt within the demon army. However, Mabel and Ruki laughed off the idea. They knew Thor's loyalty was solid. After all, a spy wouldn't give his best weapons, like the laser pointer, to the people he was supposed to be spying on. Thor then apologized to Ruki, saying that after seeing the princess's holy sword, he realized he wasn't yet skilled enough to make a weapon that surpassed. He asked for more time to study and improve. Ruki didn't mind at all. She was already impressed with his current inventions. She decided that while the main army returned to the castle, Thor and Mabel would go with General Risinga to his territory. There, Thor would finally have his own mansion and workshop built. Before leaving, Thor asked for a special alchemy permit. He knew that as he traveled, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from building things, and he didn't want to scare the locals. Ruki laughed and happily wrote him a license that gave him official permission to perform alchemy anywhere in the demon territory. 10 days later, back in the imperial capital, the mood was much darker. Count Barga Regus met with the Minister of Military Affairs, Zagran, expecting a reward. Instead, Zagran coldly informed him that the mission was a total failure. Since Thor hadn't been swayed by the letter and the Empire's plan to steal the credit for the monster kill had flopped, Zagran told the Count that his services were no longer needed. The Empire was done with the Regus family. Back in the imperial capital, Count Barga Regus met with Minister Zagran, hoping for a reward. Instead, Zagran revealed the truth. The letter sent to Thor wasn't meant to recruit him as a spy, but to make the demons doubt his loyalty. The plan failed because Thor trusted the demon territory so much that he read the letter out loud to everyone. Zagran mocked the Count, telling him he only kept his title because the Empire wanted to leave a place to return for Thor to lower his hostility. As punishment for his failure, the Count was stripped of his influence and sent to the dangerous southern front as a lowly captain of 10 men. Zagran then attended an imperial meeting to discuss the demon territory's growing power. He realized their long-range magic was a massive threat, and suspected the wandering alchemist was indeed Thor. To save his own skin, Zagran framed the mission as a joint victory, ensuring he and Princess Liana received only minor punishments. The Empire decided to focus on building defenses and training Liana rather than attacking the demons again. Zagran vowed to find a new way to restore his honor, knowing he couldn't afford another mistake. Meanwhile, Princess Liana returned her holy sword to the treasury, feeling like a failure. She was haunted by the demon lord's words about the alchemist who made her happy. Liana felt a strange obsession with this mysterious man, but was too afraid of Zagran's temper to pursue it. She went to visit her twin sister, Sophia, who lived in a secluded palace due to her frail health. Sophia and Liana looked identical, but while Liana was a warrior, Sophia was a powerful light magic user who collapsed after every spell. Sophia warned Liana not to trust Zagran's utility-first way of thinking, fearing her sister was becoming too cold. Liana, however, believed Zagran was her only ally and promised to use her status to one day give Sophia a better life. Despite her sister's warnings, Liana remained convinced that following Zagran's lead was the only way to succeed in the Empire. Sophia was kept in a separate palace because her light magic was a valuable weapon for the Empire. Even though she was physically weak, she could still power up the holy sword or boost the army's spirit. During tea, Liana mentioned that she saw a power in the demon territory that could change the entire world. After their talk, Liana went back to training her soldiers and reporting to the Emperor, but soon rumors started spreading about a secret meeting between the two sisters and Zagran. The next day, Ruki gave Thor a special permit that allowed him to practice alchemy anywhere in her lands. Chancellor Kelv added one condition. If Thor wanted to give his inventions to a lot of people, he had to fill out an application first. This was to make sure his powerful items didn't accidentally mess up the balance of the territory. Thor happily agreed, and after Ruki left for her castle, he headed toward General Risinga's mansion with Mabel and Agni. At the mansion, the general hosted a big dinner. The house was very hot because the general's family had fire giant blood, making Thor and Mabel sweat. During the meal, Thor asked if there was anyone nearby who could use light magic. He explained that he wanted to study light attacks, so he could figure out how to block the Empire's holy sword and eventually build a magic sword that was even better. Agnes promised to search the nearby forests for rare races that might have that power. To help Agnes feel more at home, Thor gave her a gift of special fire-resistant cloth. He told her she could use it to make normal dresses so she wouldn't have to worry about her flames burning her clothes anymore. The general and Agnes were both shocked and touched by how much Thor cared about their comfort. Thor was then shown to a large room that would serve as his new workshop, with Mabel staying in the room right next to him. After Thor went to his room, the general had a private talk with Agni. He told her that he might not be able to support her feelings for Thor because of his loyalty to the Demon Lord. He hinted that Ruki also seemed to have a special interest in Thor. Agnes got very embarrassed but realized that no matter what, she wanted to serve Thor with everything she had. Agnes looked up at Thor's room, feeling like a different person now that she wasn't stuck inside her heavy armor. She told her father, General Risinga, that she wanted to grow up and become someone Thor actually needed. When her dad tried to tease her by asking what kind of women Thor liked, Agnes didn't find it funny. She used the extra strength from her new health pendant to grab his arm and forced him to sit on the floor for a long, serious lecture. Upstairs, Thor was checking out his huge new workshop. It had everything he needed, including his magic storage tools. He started looking through his special magic catalog to find a way to block light-based attacks, like the ones from the princess's sword. Mabel walked in with some honey tea and snacks, telling Thor that Queen Ruki had personally ordered her to make sure he didn't stay up all night working. Thor explained to Mabel that heroes from the other world loved using flashy light magic. They even had a famous move called Ultimate Vivid Light. As they flipped through the catalog together, they found something called UV-cut parasols and lotions. They realized that UV was just a short name for that legendary ultimate vivid light magic. In the world the heroes came from, this power was so common that even kids used simple lotions and umbrellas to stay safe from it. It was a scary thought that people in that other world were strong enough to handle light magic with just their bare skin. Thor decided he should try making the UV-cut parasol first. He figured that if someone used the lotion but missed a tiny spot on their skin, the light magic would still cause a lot of pain. A parasol seemed much safer and more reliable for a fight. He got so caught up in his research that he forgot he was half-dressed while cleaning himself up for bed. Mabel noticed the water was getting cold and offered to help him wipe his back. She revealed that Ruki had given her a special waterproof magic outfit to wear so she could take care of Thor's health without getting her own clothes messy. Thor realized he couldn't really say no to their kindness and let her help him out. Thor met with General Risinga the next morning to discuss his next project, a UV-cut parasol. This item was designed to block ultimate vivid light, the strongest type of light magic used by the Empire's heroes. The general was impressed and immediately provided a piece of rare silver for the build. He refused to take any money for it, explaining that Thor's previous invention, the laser pointer, had already saved the army a fortune by preventing injuries during the last monster hunt. He saw this new project as a vital investment for the territory's defense. Thor asked about Agnes, noticing she wasn't at the office. The general explained that she was already out in the field with her guards, searching for a light magic user to help Thor test his work. Agnes was reportedly enjoying her new life, finally walking through town in normal clothes instead of her heavy hot armor. Back in his workshop, Thor prepared to start the alchemy process with Mabel. He studied the mail order catalog to understand the science behind light magic. In this world, light magic was aggressive and could actually erase a person's existence if it was strong enough. To counter this, the catalog suggested a sparkling material that could scatter and break the magic apart. Thor used his creation alchemy to build the parasol using metal, silver, and magic cloth. He designed it with 3 complex layers. The first layer used water attributes to slow down the incoming light. The second layer used silver grains to reflect and scatter the magic. The third layer was a dark attribute fabric that absorbed any leftover energy and stored it in a magic stone in the handle. The result was a high-rarity masterpiece that could cancel out almost any light-based attack or reduce its power by 90%. When Thor tested the parasol using a common magic lamp, the effect was even stronger than he expected. As soon as the lamp's light touched the parasol, the surface began to ripple like a mirror. The silver grains didn't just block the light, they dismantled the magic itself, causing the lamp to go completely dark. Thor and Mabel realized that while this was meant for defense, it could also be used to turn off an enemy's light sources instantly. They decided to keep the item as a secret experiment for now, since the demon territory was at peace, and there were no light magic users around to fight. However, just as they sat down for tea, Agnes rushed into the room. She was out of breath, but happy to report that she had found a tribe in the western forest with a member who could use light magic. This meant Thor could finally move forward with a real field test for his new invention. Agnes explained that the forest was an independent area ruled by the pixies, so even the general couldn't order them around. They would have to ask for help politely. While the group sat down for tea, Agnes shared what she had learned. She had gone into town wearing a normal dress instead of her usual armor to gather information. While she was there, a soldier told her about a pixie in the western forest who could use light magic. Pixies are tiny, only a few inches tall, and are considered legends in the human empire. In the demon territory, however, they are well known for sensing magic in the ground, which helps people find mines and good soil for farming. Even though they are very helpful, they are extremely shy and rarely show themselves to anyone. Thor didn't want to use the demon lord's power to force them to help him with his project, but Agnes revealed some surprising news. The pixies had actually asked to meet Thor first. The reason was simple. Thor's new workshop and house were being built right next to their forest. General Risinga had picked a great spot with plenty of water and magic power, but since it was so close to Pixie Land, they wanted to meet their new neighbor. They usually communicate by leaving letters on a specific tree stump, and when they heard an alchemist was moving in, they sent word that they wanted to talk. Thor agreed to go, wanting to be a good neighbor and avoid any misunderstanding. Mabel and Agnes started preparing gifts like milk, nuts, and magic stones, which are the usual things pixies like. Thor wanted to be even more professional by trying to figure out what they might need before they even asked for it. On their way to the forest the next day, Mabel mentioned that while most pixies have wind or water magic, a few are born with rare types like light or dark magic. When they reached the communication stump at the edge of the forest, the letter Agnes had left was gone, but there was no written reply. Suddenly, a tiny pixie named Renee stepped out from behind the stump. She had black hair and was wearing a large leaf as a dress. She was shaking because she had heard stories that humans were scary and loved to destroy things with magic. To make her feel safe, Thor sat down on the grass so they could talk eye to eye. Renee was surprised by how gentle Thor was. To show she trusted him, she hopped onto his palm, even though she was so small he could have easily crushed her. She explained that the real reason pixies stay hidden is that they feel embarrassed by their simple leaf clothes and think it's rude to be seen looking so shabby. Then, Renee got very serious. She offered to let Thor use her as a material for his alchemy experiments if he would grant them a favor. Thor immediately shut that idea down, telling her he would never use a living person for alchemy. He explained he was just looking for a light magic user to help test his new invention. Renee looked relieved but also sad. She told Thor that the only light magic pixie they had, a girl named Solil, was in big trouble. Because of her light magic, her body was incredibly weak and she was constantly sick in bed. Renee begged Thor to use his skills to save her friend's life. Thor learned that Solil, the light attribute pixie, had been frail since birth. Her body couldn't handle the power of her own magic, which would often stagnate and cause her to fall ill. Renee explained that while bathing in the river helped circulate her magic, Solil was too weak to travel there safely. To help, Thor pulled a footbath from his magic warehouse. He explained that this device, which used fire and wind stones to circulate warm water, would act like a miniature river for a pixie. Renee was hesitant at first, but after stepping inside the dry tub and seeing how perfectly it fit her size, she realized it could save her friend. Mabel and Agnes shared their own experiences using it, confirming that the water's flow would definitely help Solil's magic circulation. Renee then shared another problem. Pixies can only fly if their clothes allow magic to pass through them. Usually they use fresh leaves, but Solil's light magic didn't work with foliage, leaving her unable to fly or even stay dressed properly. Thor immediately provided a piece of light magic cloth. Since it shared her attribute, her magic would flow through it easily. Mabel and Agnes took charge of the tailoring. To solve the issue of the cloth becoming transparent when magic flowed through it, they decided to use layers and frills to keep the outfit modest. While they worked in the carriage, Renee expressed her desire to see more of the world Thor was changing. Thor promised to provide magic cloth of all attributes to the pixies once he got official permission from the Demon Lord's palace. Renee was so grateful she kissed Thor's forehead, promising that the pixies would be his loyal allies forever. After the girls finished the dress, Renee took the gifts, the footbath, the new clothes, and some food, and headed back into the forest to heal Solil. With that mission finished, Thor, Mabel, and Agnes traveled to a nearby town to meet Randall, General Risinga's butler. Randall was tasked with showing Thor potential locations for his new workshop. He led them to a large, two-story stone building on a hill. It was a former restaurant and shop owned by a merchant, situated perfectly between the town, the mountains, and a forest. The property was grand, featuring a well, a neglected vegetable garden, and plenty of rooms. Thor noted that the land felt rich in magic power, water from the well, earth from the garden, and wind from the steady breeze. It seemed like the perfect spot for his alchemy. Agnes was especially excited, noting that they would be neighbors. Just as Thor was about to finalize his decision, he heard a strange sound, the distinct rhythm of a child clapping. The sound wasn't coming from his companions, it was coming from right on top of the building's roof. As Thor looked at the roof, he saw small figures banging on the shingles to get his attention. 4 pixies with transparent wings were peeking over the edge. When Mabel looked up, they quickly hid, being naturally shy. Each pixie had a different hair color, yellow, blue, red, and green, representing the four elements: earth, water, fire, and wind. Thor realized they were trying to send him a message. By waving and disappearing in a specific order, the pixies signaled that the magic power in this location was unbalanced. They communicated that while wind and fire magic were strong here, the earth and water magic were far too weak. This explained why the vegetable garden was dead and why the well had completely dried up. Randall and Agnes were shocked that Thor guessed the state of the well without even looking inside, but Thor kept the pixies help a secret to respect their privacy. The group moved on to a second location near a volcano and a hot spring. Again, the pixies appeared on the roof, using gestures to show that the fire magic was overwhelming while other elements were barely present. Thor rejected this spot too, as an alchemy workshop needs a better balance of energy. Finally, they reached a third location, a large two-story mansion with a big garden and a functional well. It was an old property belonging to the general, featuring a massive hall and a large boiler room perfect for heavy-duty alchemy experiments. The pixies reappeared, this time with 7 of them present, including 2 holding black flowers to represent dark magic. They signaled that this land had a healthy balance of earth, water, wind, and darkness with just enough fire. Thor decided this was the perfect spot. Mabel noticed the pixies too, admitting she had been watching Thor so closely that she saw what he was seeing. Thor felt grateful and decided he wanted to reward the pixies for their guidance. He planned to make magic clothing for all of them so they wouldn't have to wear leaves that constantly fell apart. However, since giving away magical items on this scale required official permission, he decided to send a formal request to Chancellor Kelv. Suddenly, the pixies stopped hiding and revealed themselves to the whole group. They were so grateful for Thor helping their friend Solil that they offered to deliver his letters to the Demon Lord's castle personally. The different pixies, each with their own personality, from the cool water types to the energetic fire types, all crowded into Thor's shirt and jacket to stay hidden while they talked. Thor thanked them for their help and prepared the application for the magic cloth. He also planned to visit the forest one more time to check on Solil and see if the light attribute dress he made earlier had any side effects. Before he could finish his thought, the pixies zoomed off toward the forest to deliver the message, leaving Agnes and Randall standing there in total shock at the sight of the legendary creatures. Thor just smiled, knowing he had found both a home and some very loyal new neighbors. Randall was blown away by how much the pixies trusted Thor, especially after seeing them hide in his clothes. He promised to keep their existence a secret to respect that trust, and headed back to report the land selection to the general. With the business side of things handled, Thor, Mabel, and Agnes headed back to the western forest to check on Renee and the sick pixie Solil. The forest was a total maze with massive roots and thick branches everywhere. Since pixies fly, they never bothered making paths, so the group had to rely on the tiny creatures for directions. The pixies guided them by tapping on trees like drums and whispering through the leaves. They even shared some rare elver fruit with the group. This fruit is super hard to find and so fancy that even the Demon Lord only gets it once a year. Thor shared the sweet, juicy snack with Mabel and Agnes as they pushed deeper into the woods. Eventually, they reached a beautiful clearing with a glowing spring. There they found Solil, a pixie with platinum blonde hair, relaxing in the footbath Thor had gifted her. She looked much better and told Thor that the warm, moving water fixed the stuck magic in her body that used to give her constant fevers. For the first time ever, she felt healthy and strong. Solil then put on the new dress made from light magic cloth. Since the material matched her own magic, she could control it like it was a part of her body. She used the skirt and ribbons as extra wings, flying circles around Thor's head with ease. Seeing how much it helped, Thor decided to make magic outfits for the rest of the pixies too. He used Renee as a model to take measurements, planning to add magic wings and ribbons to their clothes so they could all fly better and stay safe. While they worked, Thor and Mabel had a major realization. This magic cloth wasn't just for style. It acted like a sensory organ that let the wearer feel the air and magic around them. They figured out that the legendary heroes probably wore similar stuff back in the day, which would explain how they had such crazy fast reflexes and could feel enemies attacking from behind. By giving these clothes to the pixies, Thor realized he was doing more than just being a good neighbor. He was actually helping their entire race evolve and become much stronger. Thor and Mabel realized that the magic cloth was more than just fabric. It was a sensory tool that could give the pixies the same incredible reflexes as legendary heroes. By providing this to them, Thor wasn't just being kind. He was helping their entire race evolve. Chancellor Kelv had been right to worry about the cloth spreading to the Empire, as its power was world-changing. To test his next big invention, Thor turned to Solil. He pulled out his white UV-cut parasol and explained that it was designed to neutralize the Empire's strongest light magic. The pixies were fascinated, never having seen a parasol before, with some even wondering if it was a tiny house. Now that Solil was healthy, she eagerly agreed to help. She promised to stay by Thor's side and blast the parasol with her light magic, until he was fully satisfied with the results. With the experiment set, Thor needed to send a formal application to the Demon Lord's castle to distribute the magic cloth. When he asked for 2 volunteers to deliver the letter, he accidentally caused a near riot. Every pixie in the area rushed him at once, swarming his pockets and clothes, all shouting that they wanted to help. After gently detaching them, he chose 2 messengers, gave them new outfits, and watched as they zipped toward the castle with incredible speed. Back at the Demon Lord's castle, Ruki and Chancellor Kelv were enjoying a rare moment of peace. They found themselves missing Thor, admitting the castle felt empty without him. They even started a friendly wager on what he was up to. Kelv bet that Thor was busy befriending a new race, while Ruki was certain he had already invented something crazy and was writing an application for it. Their debate was cut short when a guard burst in with shocking news. A group of legendary pixies had appeared at the front gate. Ruki and Kelv were stunned. Thor hadn't just done one of the things they predicted. Illegally efficient as always, he had done both. He had befriended the shyest race in the world and was using them as his personal couriers to send in a new invention request. Kelv nearly had a breakdown when he read the document. Thor wasn't just asking to give the pixies clothes. He was proposing a change that would allow the pixies to finally integrate into society and help the demon territory grow. Even more shocking was Thor's letter about the parasol. He claimed he had built something that could block ultimate vivid light, the legendary magic that had once shattered the first Demon Lord's defenses. While Kelv paced around, hitting his head against a pillar in disbelief, Ruki remained surprisingly calm. She realized that ever since she told Princess Liana she would never let Thor go, she had mentally prepared herself for his genius. She accepted everything about him, his wild ideas, his past, and his habit of doing the impossible. Leaving Kelv to process the shock, Ruki headed to the backyard to personally meet the pixies, eager to hear every detail about what her favorite alchemist was doing. Ruki met the pixies in the castle's quiet backyard. To show she trusted them, she removed her mask and robe, revealing her true face, a young, blonde girl. This was a big deal because she usually hid her appearance to look more intimidating to her general. The pixies, representing the water and earth elements, were impressed by her honesty and finally showed themselves. They were already wearing the white dresses Mabel and Agnes had made, spinning around happily to show how much they loved the new clothes. The pixies told Ruki how they met Thor and how he had saved their friend Solil with a footbath and magic cloth. They were so grateful that they had pledged their loyalty to him. To show off what the magic cloth could really do, the 2 pixies took off into the sky. They flew at supersonic speeds, using their flared skirts like wings and their ribbons to steer around tree branches with perfect precision. Ruki was stunned. She realized Thor hadn't just made clothes. He had turned the pixies into the ultimate scouts and messengers for the demon territory. Ruki officially approved Thor's request to give magic clothes to all the pixies. She knew Chancellor Kelv might find it a bit much, but the benefit to the nation was too good to pass up. She also gave the green light for the light magic experiment with the pixie Solo. While the pixies hid in her robe to snack on sweets, they shared stories about Thor, like how 20 pixies had swarmed him for a hug. Ruki found herself smiling, realizing how much life had improved since Thor arrived. However, the peaceful mood was broken when Chancellor Kelv arrived with a letter from the Dulgarian Empire. The Empire's Minister of War, Zagran, claimed their soldiers were clumsy during the last monster hunt, and announced a massive military training exercise at the border in 20 days. They specifically invited the demon territory to come and watch them, humbly display their pride, their powerful light magic. It was a clear provocation. Ruki didn't trust the Empire's sudden move. She immediately ordered Kelv to send a tailor and more fabric to Thor's new workshop so the pixies could be fully equipped. She also decided she would personally attend Thor's experiment to see if his new parasol could actually stop the Empire's light magic. While she hoped for peace, she knew they had to be ready for a fight. Meanwhile, back in the Empire, the Minister of War was already moving his next piece on the board by summoning Princess Sophia, Liana's sister, for a new mission. In the Empire, the Minister of War, Zagran, met with Princess Sophia to deliver a cold ultimatum from the Emperor. Sophia was ordered to travel to a northern border town for 3 years to perform a military exercise using her powerful light magic. This was a clear move to intimidate the demon territory. Zagran promised that if she fulfilled this duty, she would be allowed to return to the capital to pursue her research on magic that improves daily life. Though physically weak and suspicious of Zagran's motives, Sophia accepted the mission to protect her twin sister, Liana. Zagran's plan was calculated. He wanted to separate the sisters to exploit their individual strengths. By stationing Sophia at the border, he intended to showcase the Empire's terrifying light magic while using Liana to win battles and restore his own reputation after his recent failure. He even assigned his adjutant, Mariella, to monitor the local commanders and ensure the operation stayed on track. To keep Liana motivated, he lied to her, claiming Sophia had volunteered for the border mission to make up for Liana's past mistakes. Meanwhile, at General Risinga's mansion, the pixie Solil had fully recovered thanks to Thor's invention. Her magic was now circulating perfectly, and she was ready to help Thor test his UV-nullifying parasol. Since Queen Ruki and Chancellor Kelv were visiting the territory to witness the experiment, the general organized a grand reception. Thor even made sure the Shy Pixies had a private area in the hall with snacks, so they could participate without being seen by the other guests. Thor initially tried to skip the party, haunted by memories of the Empire where nobles mocked him for his lack of combat strength. However, Mabel convinced him to attend by mentioning that Ruki and Agnes were excited to show him their new dresses, especially since Agnes could finally wear one thanks to Thor's fire-resistant magic cloth. Realizing how much his friends valued his presence, Thor agreed to go. Before the festivities began, Thor started brainstorming his next project, a way to improve trade. While official relations between the Empire and the Demon Territory remained tense, unofficial trade between border towns was common. Thor leafed through his magical catalog, looking for an invention that could help circulate goods more easily between the two worlds, even as he prepared to face the political pressure of the upcoming military exercise. Thor suggested a new way to speed up trade, giving the Pixies an ultra-small, simple warehouse. Since Pixies move around unnoticed, they could carry goods across the territory much more safely than visible merchant wagons. Chancellor Kelv liked the efficiency but worried about security. If a Pixie lost a warehouse, it would be a disaster. He insisted that such a convenient item needed a lock that was impossible to break. Thor already had a solution from his catalog, the chain lock. This wasn't just any lock. The description claimed it could bind objects to the earth itself, making them impossible to move unless someone could move the entire world. Thor realized this must have been an item used in the hero's world to restrain incredibly powerful beings. He planned to use this world-binding technology to secure the warehouses, ensuring that only those with the right code could access the goods. Before the official party began, Mabel showed Thor the dress she had made using his water attribute magic cloth. Because the fabric mimics the properties of water, it reshapes itself to perfectly fit the wearer's body. Without any extra decorations like ribbons or frills, the dress ended up looking more like a tight-fitting swimsuit that showed off every curve of her figure. Thor was stunned by how beautiful she looked, but immediately told her she shouldn't wear it in front of anyone else. Mabel, thrilled by his protective reaction, promised to keep the dress only for his eyes. The celebration soon kicked off in the main hall. When Demon Lord Ruki addressed the crowd, she praised Thor's inventions, specifically mentioning how his magic cloth allowed the Pixies to finally step out into the sun and join society. Chancellor Kelv then gave a long, serious introduction for Thor, calling him a trusted ally who had helped defeat the monster Gargarasa. However, the Chancellor's praise was so intense that the local demons began to think Thor was a legendary warrior with massive combat power, rather than just an alchemist who enjoys making pillows and health items. Thor gave a humble speech, thanking the Demon Lord for her support. As the formal part of the evening ended, he spent time with Agnes and Mabel. Agnes wore a fire-themed yellow dress designed to showcase her health promotion pendant. Mabel wore a sky-blue dress that belonged to Agnes' mother. Seeing them both happy and fitting in at the party made Thor realize that his useless alchemy was doing much more than just creating items. It was building a community where everyone felt safe and included. After the party, Thor felt his face heat up as Mabel got shy about his intense staring. To cool down, he headed to the Pixies' private area. The atmosphere there was incredibly peaceful, with golden sunlight filling the room. The Pixies were thrilled to see him and insisted on sharing his tea. They even lined up in a single-file line so Thor could feed them tea and crushed cookies by the spoonful, which made them feel warm and fuzzy. Some Pixies even started undressing to avoid staining their new clothes, explaining that since Thor gifted the fabric, wearing it felt like being embraced by him. Thor eventually calmed them down and enjoyed the quiet moment, unaware that Ruki, Agnes, and Mabel were watching from a distance, feeling a bit jealous of the unique bond he shared with the tiny creatures. An hour later, the group gathered in the woods for the official test of the UV-nullifying parasol. Thor explained that according to his catalog, the UV likely stood for Ultimate Vivid Light, the legendary magic that once destroyed the Demon Lord's barriers. The parasol was rated to block 90% of this energy. To ensure absolute safety for General Risinga and Chancellor Kelv, who volunteered to hold the device, Thor didn't stop at one. He brought out a second and then a third parasol, explaining that layering them would reduce the magic's power by 99.9%. Solil, the light pixie, prepared to fire. Motivated by Thor's encouragement, she poured every ounce of her mana into a massive vivid light strike. This time, the sphere of light was the size of a human head, much larger and more dangerous than her previous practice shot. As the beam hit the first parasol, the light scattered like raindrop. By the time the energy filtered through the second and third layers, the massive attack had shrunk from the size of a head to a tiny grain of sand, before vanishing entirely. Even though Chancellor Kelv reflexively put up a magic barrier just in case, there was nothing left for it to block. The experiment was a total success. Thor's triple-layered defense had completely neutralized one of the most feared elements in the world. After the beam vanished, Thor checked on Chancellor Kelv and General Risinga. Both were completely unharmed. The parasols had neutralized the attack so effectively that they didn't even feel an impact on their personal magic barriers. The parasols also consumed almost no mana, meaning even a normal person could use them all day without getting tired. Meanwhile, Solo was exhausted from using so much power, so Thor arranged for her and the other pixies to rest at his mansion. He even asked Mabel to lend her specialized foot bath to help Solo recover fast. Thor formally reported the success to Demon Lord Ruki. He humbly apologized for needing 3 parasols instead of 1, promising to research how to condense that power into a single device. Ruki was deeply moved. She admitted that she had been terrified of light magic since childhood because of legends about it destroying previous demon lords. But Thor's invention had finally ended that fear. She immediately ordered the UV-cut parasols to be distributed to border patrol soldiers. However, Chancellor Kelv raised a concern. The technology was too valuable. If a soldier was captured or the parasol was stolen, the Empire could study and counter it. To solve this, Thor revealed his next invention, the chain lock. This wasn't a normal lock. It was a black chain that could wrap around an item or a warehouse and seal it shut. Thor demonstrated the landlock mode. When he channeled mana into the chain, auxiliary magical links burrowed deep into the earth and fused with the bedrock. Kelv and Risinga tried to lift the small box with all their strength, but it wouldn't budge an inch. Thor explained that unless someone has the power to lift the actual ground itself, the item is unmovable. The lock is keyed to the user's specific magic signature, making it nearly impossible for anyone else to open. Thor mentioned that while a legendary hero might still be able to break the chain with a holy sword or by destroying the terrain, it would stop almost anyone else. He then suggested adding a final security measure. If someone tries to force the lock, the chain will constrict and crush the item inside before self-destructing. Kelv and Risinga were shocked by the idea of destroying such valuable items, but Thor explained his reasoning. If a demon territory resident is attacked, the landlock forces the enemy to waste time digging or fighting the chain. This gives the resident a chance to escape. Thor insisted that while his items can be remade, lives cannot. Ruki was so impressed by Thor's dedication to her people that she briefly lifted her mask and whispered a promise of a personal reward just from her, not as a ruler but as a friend. She officially approved the chain lock for use, choosing the crush and shatter self-destruct method to ensure no technology ever falls into the Empire's hands. Chancellor Kelv, finally seeing that Thor wasn't just a reckless inventor but a thoughtful strategist, gave his full support to the project. Ruki and Thor decided to travel to the border with Chancellor Kelv to monitor the Empire's movements. Mabel joined them, while the Pixies were assigned to scout the area during their patrol. Thor felt a mix of nerves and excitement, knowing his inventions were now officially part of the demon territory's defense, and he prepared to leave for the mansion to rest before the journey. Meanwhile, an Imperial unit led by Captain Isaac Mueller headed north toward the same border. Isaac, an ambitious 24-year-old from a marquis family, saw this mission as his golden ticket to replace the Minister of Military Affairs, Zagran. He planned to use Princess Sophia's light magic to gain fame and elevate his family's status. Isaac remembered Thor from their time in the Empire as a useless noble with no combat skills, and felt Zagran had failed by not properly manipulating him. Isaac believed he could do better by using Sophia as a tool for his own rise to power. During a break in the journey, Isaac's second-in-command, Mariella, checked on the frail Princess Sophia. Seizing the moment, Isaac sent his loyal subordinates ahead to the border town with gold and secret orders. He told them to buy influence, identify anyone with ties to the demon territory, and locate dormant monsters that Sophia could eliminate for easy glory. Isaac was confident the demon lord wouldn't see his plays coming. Inside the carriage, Sophia caught a glimpse of something moving through the trees, a pixie, but Mariella dismissed it as exhaustion. Sophia fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of the freedom pixies represented in legend. After a taxing journey on rough roads, the convoy finally reached the border town of Nosa. The next morning, Sophia woke up in the mayor's mansion, feeling the heavy burden of her mission. She hated being a weapon and hoped that by using up her magic and training, the Empire might eventually find her useless and let her return to her sister, Liana. Despite her fatigue, she agreed to meet the local leaders to calm their fears about the sudden military presence. She refused help from her maids, knowing they were Zagran's spies, and struggled to dress herself as even light clothing felt exhausting. Covered by a veil to hide her identity, she entered the hall to greet the mayor and the head of the commercial district, who welcomed her with deep respect. Inside the hall, Princess Sophia officially introduced herself to the local leaders. She tried to reassure the people that the sudden arrival of Imperial troops wasn't for war, but Captain Isaac Mueller rudely interrupted her. He bragged about the Empire's strength and twisted her words, making it sound like she was demanding their cooperation. Before Sophia could clarify her peaceful intentions, her second-in-command, Mariella, forcefully pulled her away. Mariella scolded the princess, telling her that her only duty was to cast light magic for the military exercise and that she shouldn't bother talking to lowly commoners. Despite Sophia's protests that the people were terrified of a potential war with the demon territory, Mariella ignored her and ordered the maids to take her to her room. Mariella made it clear that she and Isaac were following Minister Zagran's orders, treating Sophia like a mere tool. Alone in her room, Sophia felt more useless than ever. She turned to a book about the legendary heroes for comfort. Reading about their world, she discovered an item called a smartphone that could send voices across great distances. She opened her window and whispered a wish to the heroes, hoping for a way to tell the demon territory that she didn't want to fight them. Suddenly, a faint voice replied, "No problem." But when Sophia looked around, the room was empty. She wondered if the demon territory was already spying on her, and despite the risk, she hoped to one day see the magical items of the hero's world. Meanwhile, back at the border, Thor was holding a tea party with Ruki and Mabel inside a simple warehouse. The Pixies arrived with a reconnaissance report. Solal explained that they saw a massive Imperial unit led by a princess in a grand carriage arriving at the town of Nosa. Based on the description of the distorted light magic Solal sensed, Thor realized this wasn't the powerful Princess Liana, but her sister Sophia, someone the Empire seemed to be discarding just like they did to him. The Pixies reported a strange detail. They overheard Sophia wishing for a smartphone. Thor, Ruki, and Mabel were stunned, as smartphones were legendary items from the hero's world. Thor explained that while he couldn't make one yet, he suspected they were key items used for grand ritual. More importantly, the Pixies shared that Sophia explicitly said she didn't want to start a war. This created a confusing situation. While the princess claimed peace, the Imperial army was positioning itself on a plane used for trade, clearly intending to harass merchants and disrupt the demon territory's economy. Ruki realized the Empire was using the military exercise as a cover to choke their trade routes. The Pixies, eager to help, offered to sneak back in and talk to Sophia directly. Ruki and Thor were hesitant, fearing the Pixies would be caught by Imperial mages. However, the tiny creatures were determined to be useful. Thor began brainstorming a way for them to infiltrate the town safely. When Ruki mentioned that Nosa was full of owls and cats used for pest control, Thor realized that if the Pixies could disguise themselves as these common animals, they could move through the town without anyone suspecting a thing. Thor realized that birds are too simple-minded to deliver letters to the princess, but if a pixie could transform into an owl or a cat, they could infiltrate the town easily. He found the perfect item in his catalog, onesies. These magical pajamas allow the wearer to transform into various animals like puppies, cats, or birds. However, Thor hesitated because his alchemy currently lacked the ability to imbue items with vibrant life force. His previous creations, like the body pillow, felt like objects rather than living things. Thor explained that his isolated past in the Empire left him with a poor understanding of the life force and magic circulation of living beings. To fix this, he needed to sense the magic power and body heat of others. He nervously asked Mabel if he could hug her to study her vitality. Mabel agreed, but after a moment of mutual embarrassment and intense staring, Thor realized that just holding hands would be enough to sense her water attribute magic. As Thor and Mabel held hands, their magic began to sink, but Ruki quickly intervened. Claiming that Thor needed to experience different types of magic to truly understand vitality, she took her turn holding his hands, offering her powerful dark attribute magic. The Pixies then joined in, swarming Thor to provide the remaining attributes: earth, fire, wind, and light. With all 6 elemental attributes gathered, a notification confirmed that Thor had awakened a new skill, Pseudo-Life Grasp. This new skill allows Thor to create items that mimic life so perfectly they are indistinguishable from the real thing. With this power, the onesies would now allow the Pixies to transform into perfectly convincing animals. Thor planned to use this to send a message to Princess Sophia. He wanted to confirm if she truly desired peace and was curious about her mention of a smartphone, a legendary item that could revolutionize the world. Ruki and Mabel prepared to brief Chancellor Kelv and General Risinga on the reconnaissance. Before leaving, Ruki mentioned that they were moving forward with Thor's other suggestion, using a modified chain lock as a trap. They planned to lure Imperial soldiers with valuable-looking goods, and then use the landlock feature to pin them down or halt their advance, turning the Empire's greed against them. Thor's plan to distract the Imperial army worked perfectly. Near the border, a group of soldiers led by Captain Isaac Mueller and his second-in-command, Mariella, discovered a massive greatsword embedded deep in a rocky cliff. Bound by heavy black chains, It looked exactly like a legendary weapon from the stories of the old heroes. Isaac and Mariella immediately began arguing over who should get the credit for the find. Isaac wanted the glory for himself, while Mariella wanted to secure it for Minister Zagrin. Because they didn't trust each other, they decided to set up a full military camp at the base of the cliff to dig the sword out. They had no idea that the holy sword was actually just a piece of rusted junk Thor had fixed up to look fancy, specifically designed to waste their time and keep them away from the town. Watching this from a nearby mountain were Chancellor Kelv and General Risinga. Both were disguised in Thor's new onesies, which had transformed them into perfectly realistic lizards. Even though Kelv felt ridiculous in the green, fluffy pajamas once he took the hood off, he couldn't deny the power of the invention. Using the chain lock ladder, they were able to scale vertical cliffs that would be impossible for normal soldiers, allowing them to scout the Empire's movements in total secret. Seeing that the Empire had taken the bait, they headed back to report to Queen Ruki. At the same time, the infiltration mission in the town of Nosa began. Princess Sophia was resting in her room when a white owl landed on her windowsill. To her shock, the owl began to speak. It was actually one of the pixies, using a bird-themed onesie to disguise itself. The pixie immediately noticed that Sophia's illness was exactly like Solil. Her light magic was too strong for her body to handle, causing her constant pain. The pixie spoke for Thor, explaining that his master desired peace but was concerned about the Empire's aggression at the border. The owl offered Sophia a deal. If she was willing to talk and work toward peace, Thor would provide her with the same health-promoting alchemy he used to save the pixie. Sophia was stunned, but didn't feel any threat from the small creature. She realized this was the opportunity she had been praying for. She told the owl that she didn't hate demons and genuinely wanted peace, mostly to protect her sister Liana from being used as a tool for war by Minister Zagrin. As she spoke to the mysterious messenger from the demon territory, Sophia felt a spark of hope that she might finally find an ally who could help her change the Empire from within. Sophia rose from her chair and bowed formally, accepting the white owl as a messenger from the demon territory. The owl requested that the Empire change the location of their upcoming military exercises. It explained that the current drills in the Western Plains were extremely dangerous, with Imperial soldiers firing magic and arrows directly at the roads used by civilians. Sophia turned pale as she realized the truth. General Isaac wasn't just training. He was intentionally harassing the demon territory and blocking trade routes that both nations relied on for survival. In this monster-infested region, the Empire and demons often had to cooperate just to stay alive. Isaac's actions weren't a display of strength, but childish bullying that put everyone at risk. The owl promised that if Sophia used her influence to move the drills, its master would provide a health good to fix her failing circulation. The owl revealed it had suffered from the same condition, excessive light magic causing weakness and coldness, but was cured by its benefactor, Thor Kanan. Sophia recognized the name. Thor was the boy the Empire had sent away as a hostage. To prove his sincerity, Thor had made a bold vow. If Sophia was unsatisfied with the treatment, he would personally stand and receive the full force of her most powerful light magic as punishment. Struck by Thor's incredible courage and his willingness to risk his life for peace, Sophia decided to trust him. She handed over her precious silver ring as a sign of her commitment and promised to stop the Imperial soldiers. At midnight, the owls returned with a square tub called a footbath. As soon as Sophia placed her feet inside, the warm, vibrating water began to massage her body. The stagnant magic power that had been making her sick started to flow smoothly. The relief was so intense she had to cover her mouth to keep from crying out. After the treatment, the owl gave her a special set of translucent underwear made by Thor. He explained that these garments were specifically designed to help people with light magic maintain their circulation. Though the clothes were transparent and a bit embarrassing, Sophia put them on, feeling her strength return instantly. She realized the demon territory's technology was far beyond the Empire's, making any war even more foolish. The next morning, Sophia woke up feeling like a completely different person. The sluggishness was gone and she could cast magic without any effort. Her skin was glowing and her hair looked lustrous. Determined to honor Thor's bravery, she didn't wait for her maids to help her. She dressed herself and walked energetically through the mansion. The staff and soldiers were stunned to see the once bedridden princess walking with such vigor. Taking advantage of the fact that Isaac and Mariella were still away, Sophia took command. She politely asked the guards to escort her to the city gates, using her authority as the highest-ranking person present. The soldiers, captivated by her radiant energy and kindness, immediately agreed to follow her. Sophia stepped out of the mansion, ready to put an end to the military harassment. As Princess Sophia walked through the town of Nosa, the people cheered, begging her to maintain the peace. At the town gate, she met a returning scout who had found a letter at the demon territory's contact point. Taking charge in the absence of the commanders, Sophia opened the letter to find a formal request for a meeting from Demon Lord Ruki Evergard. Sophia immediately agreed, ordering a response to be sent and summoning local experts to help her prepare. She felt a deep sense of duty to use her temporary health to protect her sister, Liana, and the people of the border. 3 days later, Isaac returned from the eastern mountains and was stunned to hear that the frail princess had taken command. He couldn't believe she had intercepted the letter and arranged a meeting herself. He realized he had completely underestimated her. She wasn't just a sickly girl, but a sharp leader who had outwitted him and Mariella. Frustrated, Isaac ordered his troops to abandon the investigation of the legendary sword. He knew he had to return to town to manage the meeting, fearing what Sophia might say to the demon lord without his supervision. Meanwhile, at the mountain, Mariella's team finally managed to snap the chains on the sword using magic axii. However, the moment the chains broke, the sword shattered into useless dust. Unbeknownst to the Empire, this was Thor's improved chain lock at work, a security feature that destroys the protected item if the lock is tampered with. To the Imperial soldiers, it looked like a holy sword rejecting an unworthy master. While Isaac planned to use the sword fragments as a record of Mariella's failure, Mariella herself spiraled into despair. She opened a secret letter from her boss, Minister Zagran, which contained a plan B. Use Sophia to eliminate a dormant monster in the north to show off the Empire's strength. Back at the mansion, Sophia confronted Isaac. She firmly ordered him to move the military exercises away from civilian road, using the demon lord's protests as leverage. When Isaac questioned her sudden recovery, she claimed her sense of duty had given her temporary strength. Seeing that the soldiers were already inspired by her bravery, Isaac realized he couldn't stop her by force. Isaac agreed to cooperate but asked for a favor. He wanted Sophia to help defeat a monster in the northeastern forest that was resistant to dark magic. Since the demon territory struggled against it, Isaac saw this as a way to flaunt the Empire's light magic. Sophia agreed without hesitation, eager to finish the task quickly while her strength lasted, unaware that she was stepping into a calculated move by the Imperial leadership. Sophia was secretly trembling with fear, but she accepted the dangerous task of hunting the monster for the sake of her people. Her bravery won over the soldiers, forcing Isaac to act like a loyal servant. He knelt and promised to follow her orders, but in his head, he was already planning to cheat. Even though the meeting rules allowed only one weapon, he planned to hide as many daggers and swords as possible on his body, just in case things went wrong. At the same time, Ruki and her advisors were having their own strategy meeting. They knew the Empire couldn't be trusted. Even though the rules for the meeting were strict, they decided to use Thor's simple warehouse item to carry hidden gear. They also brought a UV-cut parasol that Thor made, which could block almost all light magic attacks. Kelv realized that thanks to Thor's laser pointers, their magic range was now way better than the Empire's, giving them a huge secret advantage. Kelv then suggested a special plan to protect Thor. He proposed that Thor and Mabel should pretend to be engaged. He knew the Empire might try to lure Thor back, but having a demon fiancé would make it much harder for them to claim him. Ruki agreed because it was the smartest way to keep Thor safe, even though the idea made her feel a bit uneasy and jealous. Thor was also preparing for the big day. He looked at the ring Sophia had given him and was shocked to find it was actually made of rare, high-quality mithril. He realized Sophia was being more sincere than he thought. He wanted this meeting to be a success so that the demon territory could have trade and peace, and Sophia could continue her recovery. The group finally reached the meeting spot at the border forest. General Risinga ordered the main army to stay back at a safe distance. Only the small core group, Ruki, Kelv, Risinga, and Thor, stepped out to finally meet the Imperial Princess. Before leaving the encampment, Thor was stopped by Mabel, who carefully straightened his messy clothes to make sure he looked presentable for the meeting. Mabel was visibly blushing, especially since Kelv had officially announced her and Thor's temporary engagement to prevent the Empire from reclaiming him. Thor reassured her that he belonged in the demon territory and had no intention of returning to the Empire. As a gesture of his commitment, he gave her a silver ring he had crafted, inspired by a special luck ring from his magic catalog. Mabel was touched, noting that the ring fit her finger perfectly because Thor had remembered her size from when they held hands. Thor then joined Ruki, Kelv, and Risinga to head to the meeting spot. Across the clearing, Princess Sophia arrived in a white dress, accompanied by 2 heavily armored guards including Isaac Mueller. Behind them stood a large unit of heavy cavalry. Isaac, acting paranoid about the princess's safety, demanded they hold the meeting from a distance of 10 meters. To bridge the gap, Thor stepped forward alone. Facing his former countrymen, Thor knelt before Sophia. Isaac tried to dismiss him as a mere translator, but Sophia silenced him, eager to hear Thor's thoughts. Thor looked Sophia in the eye and made a bold vow. If he spoke any lies about the demon territory's peaceful intentions, she should strike him down with her strongest light magic. Sophia was moved by his sincerity and chose to trust him. When Isaac continued to act aggressively, Thor cleverly provoked him. He brought up the holy sword that had shattered in Isaac's hands, suggesting that a true hero wouldn't be so afraid to speak with others. This public reminder of Isaac's failure forced the commander to stay quiet. Sophia then criticized her own side, pointing out that the demon territory had shown more sincerity by bringing fewer guards, while the Empire had shown up with an army. She took Thor's hand, and he led her to meet Ruki. The meeting began with Ruki and Sophia speaking as equals. Sophia immediately apologized for the aggressive military drills and promised to move them. They moved on to trade, discussing how the demon territory's new silver mines could benefit the border town of Nosa. Both leaders were impressed by each other's wisdom and maturity. Even Isaac and the Imperial soldiers were stunned, watching the once frail princess debate the demon lord with such confidence and authority. On the other side, Kelv and Rizinga watched with respect, realizing that Sophia was a far more capable leader than they had anticipated. During the negotiations, Sophia's sharp political mind shone as she and Ruki discussed setting up a neutral trading post to avoid tension between humans and demons. However, as the meeting went on, Sophia began to look exhausted. Thor realized that the effects of the footbath he had given her were wearing off, and her body was once again struggling with its overwhelming light magic. Despite her fatigue, Sophia made a stunning announcement. She declared that she wanted to become engaged to Thor. This wasn't a romantic confession, but a calculated move to protect the peace. If she were engaged to someone in the demon territory with Ruki's blessing, the Empire's high officials, including the greedy minister Zagran, would find it much harder to recall her or force her into a political marriage elsewhere. She was even willing to be a concubine, or have her name erased from the royal records to stay at the border and serve her people. Isaac, the Imperial commander, was furious and tried to shut down the meeting, claiming the princess was just tired. To save the situation, Thor stepped in and suggested a private talk with Sophia in a nearby tent. Ruki agreed, trusting Thor completely, though she teased him about his responsibilities toward her and Mabel before sending him off. Inside the tent, Thor knew Isaac would be peeking in to spy on them. To ensure total privacy, Thor revealed a new invention, the improved body pillow. By pouring their magic into these covers, the pillows transformed into perfect physical doubles of Thor and Sophia. These decoys sat together and mimicked a conversation, moving their lips and shifting naturally to fool anyone watching from the outside. While the decoys acted as a distraction, Thor showed Sophia the real secret. He opened a hidden door in a stool that led into a simple warehouse. This was a miniaturized, comfortable room equipped with chairs and a tea set. The two stepped inside the soundproof, hidden space to speak freely about their true intentions and the future of the border, away from the prying eyes of the Empire. Inside the simple warehouse, Thor showed Sophia the hidden room. She was amazed by the technology and revealed that her sister, Liana, had previously tried to recruit the alchemist who repaired her sword, not realizing it was Thor. Thor explained that in the Empire, alchemists are treated as low class, but the demon territory gave him a purpose and a home. He had Sophia use the footbath immediately. As the magic vibrations relaxed her body, Thor explained that he wouldn't provide this technology to the Empire because they would just use the improved health of their soldiers to attack the demon. He admitted he wanted to help her because they both knew what it felt like to be deemed useless by their own country. Sophia confessed that the kind tone of the messenger owls made her trust Thor before they even met. Seeing his sincerity, she officially agreed to the engagement. Thor promised to take responsibility for her health and suggested they build a trading post where she could visit for regular treatment. Sophia then shyly asked for more underwear. Since the magic garments were transparent, she couldn't let her maids wash them and had to do it herself. Thor, embarrassed by his oversight, promised to send more. They agreed that if the Empire ever stripped her of her title, she would be welcome to live in the demon territory as a civilian. Just as Thor was about to explain his UV-cut parasol invention, Ruki's voice shouted from outside. A monster emergency had interrupted the meeting. Nearby, the situation was chaotic. Earlier, the Imperial official Mariella had ignored orders and taken a small squad to a mountain cave to find a sleeping bear as a trophy for Minister Zagran. Instead of a bear, they found a nightmare, a massive man-eating centipede over 10 meters long. The creature had already devoured the local monsters and was highly sensitive to sound. Terrified, Mariella and her men fled. During the frantic retreat, Mariella's horse tripped on tree roots, launching her into a river where she was swept away unconscious. Thor's scout owls found one of Mariella's survivors who was rambling in shock about the giant worm. The owls directed the soldier back to the Imperial camp and flew to warn Thor. Outside the tent, Ruki, Kelv, and Rizinga prepared for battle. They confirmed that these giant centipedes were likely a new, aggressive species that had moved into the territory. Meanwhile, Isaac was furious to learn that Mariella's incompetence had woken the creatures. With Mariella missing in the river and the monsters closing in, Isaac had no choice but to drop his schemes and order his troops to prepare for a desperate defense alongside the demon. Isaac Mueller quickly organized his soldiers, ordering the heavy cavalry to the front and the infantry to protect the mages. He was determined to stop the monsters before they reached the town or the demon territory, knowing that his rival Mariella would be held responsible for waking them up. Princess Sophia, feeling much stronger after Thor's treatment, insisted on using her light magic to protect her people. As they rushed off, Thor tried to give Sophia a small coin-like item, but Isaac hurried her away before he could hand it over. Thor met up with Ruki and Mabel, offering Ruki a disc-shaped self-defense item that makes a loud blaring sound when activated. Ruki decided not to use it yet, fearing the noise would confuse the soldiers during the heat of battle. She told Thor to stay in the back with Mabel, and made him promise not to go running toward any light magic with his parasol. Thor then shared a plan to trap the fast-moving centipedes using his items, and Ruki promised to handle the political issue of the Empire seeing his technology. The pixies returned from scouting in their owl forms and agreed to help with the trap. As the group moved toward the battlefield, the first monster appeared, a massive obsidian-shelled centipede with 4 eyes and jaws strong enough to crush rocks. The Demon Territory's army struck first. Thanks to Thor's laser pointers, Ruki's long-range black flames hit the monster from an impossible distance, shocking the Imperial soldiers with their accuracy. Isaac signaled his mages to fire and led a cavalry charge. Although the centipede was fast and knocked many riders down, the soldiers managed to surround it. Suddenly, black chains dropped from the sky as the pixies flew overhead. Using the landlock feature, the chains burrowed into the ground and pinned the monster down completely. Isaac realized these were the same unbreakable chains he had seen at the mountain. With the monster trapped, the soldiers moved in for the kill. However, the ground began to shake and rise. Isaac remembered the scout reports mentioned multiple monsters, including some that could burrow. Just as he realized the danger, a third centipede, twice as large as the others and likely the leader, burst out of the ground right behind the front lines. It headed straight for the mages and Princess Sophia. Isaac screamed for the Demon Territory to help as the giant creature loomed over the defenseless princess. Thor met with the pixies, who returned from scouting in their owl form. He explained his plan to use his newly designed items to help Ruki and Sophia handle the monsters more easily. While Mabel held one of the disc-shaped buzzers Thor created, the group moved toward the front lines to join the soldiers. At the Imperial front, Isaac Mueller watched as the first massive centipede approached at high speed. The creature was a nightmare of obsidian shells and countless legs, confirming it was a new species. Despite the tension, the Imperial soldiers stood firm, inspired by Princess Sophia's presence. Isaac signaled his mages and cavalry to attack, but the Demon Territory's army struck first. Ruki launched powerful black flames that traveled an incredible distance, hitting the monster before it even reached the Imperial reign. The battle grew intense as the mages fired and the cavalry charged. The centipede was incredibly fast, dodging fireballs and slamming into the cavalry, knocking soldiers from their horses. Just as the monster seemed unstoppable, the pixies flew overhead and dropped heavy black chains. These chains, powered by magic, wrapped around the creature and pinned it firmly to the ground. Seeing the monster trapped, Isaac and his men rushed in to finish it off. He noticed the Demon Lord's forces were already close to defeating the second centipede. Suddenly, the ground beneath Isaac began to shake violently. He realized the reports were right. There were more than 2 monsters. A third centipede, twice the size of the others and likely the leader, burst from the earth. It had tunneled past the front lines and was now surfacing directly in front of the unprotected Princess Sophia and her mages. Isaac's horse was knocked down by the erupting dirt, and in desperation, he called out to the Demon Territory's army to save the princess. After the battle was won and the monsters were cleared, the combined forces headed northeast toward the forest where the creatures had originated. It turned out the monsters were stirred up because some Imperial soldiers had invaded their territory. While walking, General Risinga accidentally pressed the buzzer Thor had given him. The device shouted Amawarison, the new name Isaac had taken. Isaac immediately rushed over, thinking he was being called, which led to an awkward apology from Thor and the general. Thor realized he would need to make a different version of the buzzer for the princess, so it wouldn't accidentally summon Isaac every time. The group reached a large cave at the base of a rock wall, believed to be the monster's den. Isaac proposed that the Demon Territory's experts and the Imperial soldiers enter the cave together to investigate why these new species appeared. Ruki agreed, and a joint search party was formed. Thor decided to join the investigation, hoping his alchemy skills could help identify any clues. Before entering, Thor asked the pixies to check the cave for magic. They reported traces of dark earth and water magic but didn't sense any more large monsters inside. To stay safe, Thor and Mabel entered the cave with General Risinga and a small team. The pixies stayed close, disguised as small cats sitting on Thor and Mabel's shoulders to act as hidden guards as they stepped into the darkness.